The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and an actual surprise ending. Who would have thought?
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this is...
Bonjour!
Bonjour! And this is podcast episode number 303. This week we will be discussing the season 1 finale of Daryl, Dixon, episode number 6, titled Coming Home, which in French means coming home. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's English. Oh, I see what happened there.
No. You should have said it's entitled Coming Home, which, if you were to say it in French, would be Coming Home.
Yeah, exactly. If you were to say it with a French accent, because it's different words in French, I'm sure. I'm sure our listeners are going to be so excited when we stop doing terrible French accents starting next week. Although maybe that's
right.
what would make our Fear the Walking Dead coverage more spicy, is if we do a fake French accent, and that'll just, be more fun. Because we have to bring some kind of element of fun to it. Because the show isn't going to do that.
Oh, I know.
Let's be honest.
I think we should just pretend that they're all wearing berets.
That would explain a lot. All right, well, let's get into our discussion of the season finale of Daryl, Dixon. I went first last week on our quick thoughts, so Steve, why don't you give your thoughts first? What did you think of this episode?
All right. Yeah, okay. I think my thoughts for this week are kind of where my thoughts were last week, and that I was highly entertained. It had a lot of, I thought, fun action, but overall there was nothing that we'll get into it in the details. There was one moment where something happened where I went, really? I didn't expect that. And everything else was just very standard by the numbers, where you could just see plot points coming, a mile away. So at least I could. And it was very, very, kind of just your standard end of the season, and we'll, crank things up next year, when we roll the U2 song and off we go. And so, I mean, it was perfectly enjoyable. Like I said, it's well made, looked great. There was some fun moments and some exciting moments, but just overall it was just kind of normal. There was nothing in it that happened that, would in days gone by, you'd be talking about, in the break room the next day at work, like, oh my God, did you see that? It was nothing. It was all very standard. So what'd you think?
I felt very similarly. We started talking before we started recording, and I felt like last week's episode, Steve and I differed on one thing. We both agreed that there were still some moments of like a little bit of cliche, a little bit of tropey, a little bit of stereotypical. But I enjoyed the episode last week so much with the action and crazy things going on that I was able to sort of forgive those things and look over them, or they just didn't bother me as much. Whereas this week, I'm a little bit more agreeing with Steve. And mostly just because this is a finale, folks. Like, this is a season finale, and typically that's where you want to, ramp it up. And, there was some ramped up action and some ramped up emotions. And, they did follow through on a couple of things. I mean, they did make it to the nest and all of that. But like Steve said, there were some moments that you sort of rolled your eyes at or whatever. And that's not a good thing to have in a finale. But like Steve said, I agree. It was entertaining. I enjoyed myself in a lot of the episode, but I still think that there are some cliched, stereotypical, yada yada kind of moments that they will need to work on in season 2. Sort of tighten that up, maybe sort of reach for the stars in different areas. And I'm with you. Like, there were a lot of very sort of predictable moments in this finale. And I think what's a shame is the only real moment that was, I joked about it in the disclaimer that there was a surprise ending, which it was only a surprise to people if you were completely out of social media from Thursday through Sunday, because I already watched that scene because it was online. You know what I mean? They showed it at New York Comic Con. They released it in advance, and I already saw that.
Which is what the crazy Carol scene.
Yeah, the little tag at the end there, like the moment with Carol and the guy in the car and the motorcycle, the whole thing. So it wasn't a surprise to me, and it wasn't a surprise to anyone who watched any of the content that came out of New York Comic Con. It's a shame, honestly. Like, I know that they were excited and that they wanted to announce the Carol portion, but again, much like when you announce that one of your main characters is going to be on a spin-off show, almost like 8 months prior to your actual main show ending, then that means that person's not in any danger. So, I mean, we're going to get season 2, so we knew Daryl was fine. And we didn't know that Melissa McBride was coming back fully to the show until you kind of saw it happening. I thought that was a shame. It's a shame that they played it that way. And I know that, like I said, I know they were excited to announce Melissa McBride's involvement. I don't know. It's so tough with the internet. Like, and I only watched stuff because they had a really nice teaser for The Ones Who Live. So that's why I was sort of looking at the media and I was like, oh, what's this Carol thing? Yeah, that was my mistake.
See.
So anyway.
I did not see any of that. So this, I technically did not know it was coming, but I mean, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. I mean, who's the only person it would be? Really?
I guess I'd say, and this wasn't the moment that I'd mentioned where something happened that did kind of surprise me. For a second, it would have surprised me if when she opened the trunk, like Judith was in there and, she samurai'd the guy with her katana or something. that would have been a surprise. But, or like if Dog was,
right,
hiding in the trunk and she opens the door and the dog, jumps the guy and then she gets the upper hand. Something like that. That would have been nice too, I suppose. But I certainly, when as soon as I saw the car, I saw the motorcycle and first I'm like, is that Daryl? And then, then as they, kind of pull back from the close up and you see it's this guy. And then as soon as the car's behind him, I'm like, well, that's Carol. Right? I mean, like you said, who else could it be? I mean,
right,
obviously it's Carol. So,
right.
But again, it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's not terrible storytelling. It's just like, when characters really well, you have to, and your audience knows your characters really well. Like there isn't anybody else that would go after Daryl like that. Maybe Rick would, but Rick isn't a quantity right now. So
maybe that's the surprise.
Maybe that's who was inside, We'll see. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing some more Carol because I actually really enjoy Carol's character. So I'm excited to sort of have her back in the universe. But I hope that I hope that there's some more thought into some of her scenes. She was very Carol-like in those scenes, but anyway, so we're getting into the weeds here. We're in the weeds, people. So I'm pushing my way
in the
out.
weeds, people.
In the weeds already. Before we get into more detail, because we have plenty of detail to discuss, let's first remind ourselves of the plot structure for this episode by going through the episode description, and then we'll dovetail right into the writer-director, and we'll get discussing on our points. So, Steve, why don't you get started there?
All right. Well, again, this is The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, episode 1.6, entitled Coming Home, where our episode description is Janae solidifies her base of power. Daryl has a job to do before he can return to America. And Carol makes a surprise, although if you watch the New York Comic Con footage beforehand, it wasn't much of a surprise, reappearance at the very end. And that is your episode description.
My only thing I would say is Janae attempts to solidify her base of power. I'm not sure how solidified she made it, because that whole that whole thing did not work the way she wanted it to. But I digress.
No.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, it did not.
It did not. So yeah, sorry about that. But anyway, so let's talk writer and director of the episode.
Yeah, I was shocked, but the internet was incorrect. And this is like the first time, I think, in the history of the internet that something was on there that wasn't true.
A bit.
I'm just saying, because the Walking Dead wiki and several other sources had indicated that Greg Nicotero was going to direct at least one of the episodes this season. And, as we were going along, just by process of elimination, last week we were like, Greg Nicotero directs the season finale. And no, he didn't. Not even a little. He didn't. And basically, our director is the same guy that directed the majority of the episodes. It's this guy, Daniel Percival. So we talked about him a bunch. He ended up directing 4 of the 6 episodes. And like we said last week, he's already been confirmed to direct 2 episodes of season 2. So he's probably already in the process, because one of them is episode number 2. And I imagine they're probably already on that one by now. So,
yeah.
But our writers are once again Jason Richman, who is an executive producer on the show. He is not the showrunner, but he is one of the execs. And his co-writer is a gal named Laura Snow. And so starting with Jason, we've talked about him a bunch. This is the 3rd episode that he's written. He wrote 1.2, Alouette. He wrote 1.5, Du Amuse. And then he wrote this one. So, and then Laura Snow, this is her first Walking Dead credit of any kind. And this is obviously the only episode she wrote on this show for this season. And I could find no other major credits for her on the interwebs. So it looks like this could be her first major writing credit. So, and again, I thought the episode was kind of by the numbers, but there was nothing about the writing that, I thought was overly bad. There was a couple of, like you said, kind of eye-rolling moments and sort of kind of yawning, well, that kind of went the way I thought it was going to go moments. But overall, it was okay. So
yeah,
I thought the writing and directing was pretty good. Did you have anything that jumped out at you on either of those?
No. When we get into like sort of the points, but I agree with you that there was nothing that, the internet will probably disagree with me, because I'm seeing a lot of people that are, the Daryl and Carol lovers, or, the fact that there's even like a hint of another woman and whatever. There's people are up in arms about a lot of stuff, but that, I'm not a shipper, so that stuff doesn't bother me as much. It just makes him seem more well-rounded, because, we can be attracted to more than one person. Hello. But, I don't
just think next on season 2, if things go the way we think they will, even Carol will become a shipper.
Ooh. I see what you did there.
See what I did there?
Yeah. But there was nothing that was written that felt out of place. I just felt, like you were saying, there were just some moments made go, and like cringy, like in the stereotype sense or the cliche sense, you know what I mean? But nothing was like, this wasn't like Fear the Walking Dead level of like ridiculousness. They were all,
yes.
Perfectly well structured written moments. There was just a few things that you were like, and we'll, like I said, we'll get to those when we get to all of our points. But yes, there are definitely some moments, but they were the dialogue was snappy and catchy and stuff like that. So, and there was nothing that felt out of character to me, for sure. So, no.
Okay, cool.
So, no, nothing stands out very much. So, yeah. I thought the
All right,
direction was
two
beautiful. I
ghouls
mean,
enter, one ghoul leaves. Two ghouls enter, one ghoul leaves. Come on, let's go.
yeah, Thunderdome. Um, so let's talk that first scene there. The Thunderdome, I love it. I mean, it's not a surprise that Daryl, prevailed. To be honest, I mean, I wasn't surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah.
the
Shock that he survived.
yeah, he the series is named after him, so I think it was a pretty safe bet he was going to make it through.
Yeah.
I liked that, the first Walker, which he had to take care of by himself before he got his tag team partner. He finishes it off with the flag, which I was on the fence about because part of me feels like it was super cliche, but part of me also thinks it was kind of awesome because he was literally just looking for another sharp, pointy object. It just so happened that they were trying to do some sort of very, nationalistic, pride sort of moment, like weird, it was very like military/government, like we're awesome, join our group kind of thing. We're the purpose, we will move forward. So them having flags there was definitely very representative of the kind of event that Janae was doing. Mm-hmm. So those flags were not out of place, but for them to be the thing that he used when, I don't know that there was any other options nearby, but the flag and the way that he did it, like the motion, like he's sticking the flag in Iwo Jima or whatever. And it's like, and really what he's doing is he's killing a zombie. So I don't know. There was, I struggle with that because I still think the visual of it was super cool. And the using of items that are right near you, that's definitely part of Daryl's experience in the apocalypse is, when it comes to pointy objects, any port in a storm kind of thing, it's right there, grab it.
Sure.
But like the fact that it was this moment, it's this important, like, unification sort of governmental moment with Janae, and it just so happens that he wins, he makes her look stupid, and he does it with her flag. A little bit cliched. So, yeah. Two ghouls enter, one ghoul leaves. Was it two? It was five.
No. Yeah. They they upped the ante. I mean, he takes out the first one, and then they bring Quinn out.
Yeah.
And they chain them together, and they give like Quinn like a big hammer, and they kind of wipe the acid off of Daryl's, halberd or axe or whatever you want to call it, and give it back to him. So they're both armed, and I know you had the same note that I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, oh, so now they're gonna make the two of them fight each other.
I mean, it was the most logical conclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, in the moment, right then and there, especially since they knew that there was tension there. Mm-hmm. There was tension there now, but they were sort of working at a dual purpose, like a combined purpose earlier. Yeah. Just, and to have done that in front of, Isabel and Laurent would have been very impactful to make them fight each other. So it felt very like, oh, okay, this is happening. And then it wasn't.
Yeah, and they even, I mean, they kind of have a little bit of conversation suggesting that, Daryl says something like, I'm not going to die in here. Yeah. And Quinn's like, well, you look half dead already. I'll take care of the other half or something. So they kind of are, because I don't, clearly they weren't given like an itinerary of what was going to happen. And so, they're kind of squaring off, and then, and this was definitely I was like a really moment, because the lights go dark in the arena there, and they're like in the dark for like 5 seconds, and then the lights come up, and then somehow they've got like ghouls posted all around them.
Right.
And I'm like, how did they all get there that quick?
That was a pretty impressive scene change to do that in the dark.
Yes.
And like opening up those gates to get them in there.
Quietly.
And of course, the ghouls didn't make a lick of noise.
No,
you know?
They were all quiet. Yeah, it's just the whole Thunderdome sequence. I mean, it was fun to watch, and some really fun moments with the ghouls, which we'll get into here in a minute, I'm sure, and what some of their targets and what happened to them, and it was fun to see Daryl and Quinn fight them, and use the chain to cut the one's head off, and all that stuff. It was great, and it was super enjoyable. But I mean, it was just ridiculous. You know what I mean? You're just like, this is clearly them just playing, and going back to the whole thing of, this is what Janae has been spending all of her time and efforts on. Mm-hmm. Why? What is the point? I still don't get it. What is the point? So what? You have a chemical that can like soup up a walker. Okay.
Right. Well, and the thing that's funny is that it almost like, as much as they were looking at this as sort of like a show of strength, or we can look what we've done, mm-hmm. and we can overpower anyone, even someone who is like a very strong fighter of the dead, like Daryl is. If we can overpower him, and he's got so many years of experience, then this will work in all of these different applications or what have you. I thought that the best part of the whole scene was that every time there was some type of failure or whatever, mm-hmm. the look between the scientist and Janae, mm-hmm. every time when he's like, we still have more that we can use. She's like, I hope so. And like every time.
When he goes like, obviously we still have a little bit of more work to do, and she's like, yes, you do.
Yeah, like, you think so? It was, I like that, because like what you were saying, and most people have been saying this, is they don't understand what Janae's doing. I wonder if she even knows what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, she's very well informed. Mm-hmm. So she may have been given like sort of a, maybe a variety, like a multiple choice of like, these are the things we're going to try to do. But she may not know what like the final product would look like until they did this sort of like test run, mm-hmm. Yeah. And because she seemed pretty surprised at a lot of that stuff. I mean, we know, like, okay, so there was and you pointed it out too, the first one that, they shoot the thing, and all five of the ones that are out there that Quinn and Daryl have to face, mm-hmm. and they're all doing their different, Hulk roid rage moment of like, oh, I'm getting strong. Mm-hmm. And then there's the one who is short circuiting, mm-hmm. which we've already seen this, and he eventually the head bursts. Yeah. Which was awesome.
It was. That was just gory fun, And you see like he gets like the big goiter in his neck as it's like filling up with blood or whatever, and then it just the whole head just pops. That was, I love that moment. That was a great moment.
I thought it was great too, because you've got the moment going between the scientist and Janae up there of like absolute disappointment, and he's like, oh my God, she's going to kill me.
Exactly.
So that's happening, but then you have like Daryl and Quinn are both looking, and they have no idea. Like, we as the audience are like, oh, this one's gonna explode, because we already saw that happen before. There's like a malfunction. And so when Quinn's like, what is going on? Mm-hmm. Like, what is this? And then it explodes, and then they have a moment of like actual relief on their face. You can see it for a hot second. They're like, okay, 1 down, 4 to go, right? Mm-hmm. In essence, which I thought was great. And then they start letting them free, like one by one. Mm-hmm. And the two that they let, the walker attacks the other walker.
Does.
Which is not behavior we've ever seen before.
No, and then it proceeds to like rip its jaw right off, and in another great effects moment. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was just gory fun. There's no doubt, and we didn't mention this before, but when the episode picks up, and Daryl's just fighting the one walker from the end of last week. They cut to a scene up top where Janae is, and of course standing next to Janae is Izzy and Laurent, and Isabel is like praying for Daryl. She's like, God, please protect Daryl, keep him under your wing, and blah blah blah. And the kid just kind of looks at her and goes, he's gonna be fine, you know. And so then Daryl dispatches that one. And then, of course, Quinn comes out, they chain them together, and then the lights go on, lights come up, and there's the 5 walkers, and they're all they get hit with the darts, and they're all kind of powering up, and it cuts back to that scene, and now the kid's using the exact same prayer that she just used. Yeah. And so it's like, Daryl's... okay, now, the God kid is now going, could you help him out here? Because I don't have a good feeling about this one, you know? I mean,
yeah, it's like, Daryl's going to make it, and then it's like, well, I mean, if God can step in and help out a little bit, that'd be great right now.
That would really be great. Yeah. So I thought that was a fun little moment. But yeah, then you know, the one ghoul kind of just tackles the other one and is just ripping at him, and like we said, it takes his head off. And then they I'm not sure what this has to do with the serum or whatever, but then there's one of the ghouls that's out there has like metal plates attached to its head, because Quinn is like pounding on it with the hammer that he has, and all you're seeing are like, they were obviously CGI, but they were sparks, you know, that were coming off of this metal plate. And again, it was just a fun moment, you know, but you're just like, why would you, you know, I don't understand. But and I when I watched it the second time, you can see where Quinn gets bit. You know, that it's really quick. It's just like, you know, we see in a lot of these shows when a character gets bit in an action scene, where there's a moment where the ghoul does kind of come up behind him and has his head near like his shoulder blade, because that's kind of where it looked like he, you know, had the bite wound. But there's, you know, it's not long and drawn out, and I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, like that ghoul was able to bite through like, you know, 3 layers of clothing, you know, the suit coat and the shirt and all that stuff that he's wearing, and did it in like 1 second. Wow, you know, that was awesome, you know. But there is a moment you see it, and of course then, you know, they end up dispatching them all, and that allows Daryl to basically get ahead.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Did you see what I did there?
I saw what you did there.
Okay.
I did think that the tossing of the head was pretty awesome. There were a lot of parallels in this scene with Ridley Scott
with Gladiator,
and Russell Crowe's Gladiator.
Yeah.
From the, you know, the chaining the two of them together was definitely, you know, they utilized that. And then I loved the, you know, the tossing of the head was just, that's such a, you know, I was totally expecting Daryl to be like, are you not entertained?
Well, and what's interesting is on AMC Plus, after this episode was released, they released a like behind the scenes episode, and it's like 40 minutes long, so it encapsulates the whole season, not just a single episode. But Norman, who was interviewed quite a bit, he refers to that scene, and I only watched about 15, 20 minutes of it. I haven't seen the whole thing yet, but he refers to that scene as the gladiatorial scene.
Oh, nice.
So they, when they were filming it, they were talking about it as like you're like in the arena, and it's like a gladiator. So I'm sure there was a lot of talk about Ridley Scott's Gladiator and those sequences in the Coliseum, and that's why you see Daryl and even Quinn, you know, looking up at the mob, if you will, and just like in Gladiator, you know, once they win, then the mob starts chanting their names, right? You know, you're winning them over. And it was you even he didn't say it, but you kind of got the sense that Daryl was definitely doing the "Are you not entertained?"
Oh yeah.
So
he was having his moment, sort of standing there when they were because the crowd started chanting Dixon, 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 and when that happened, you could feel like because that was the main thing that they said in Gladiator was to win the crowd. And
Yeah.
he won the crowd.
Oh yeah,
you know?
absolutely. And which like you said, that was the last thing that Janae was planning for this event. The whole event was to wipe him out and kind of prove to everybody that she's the big bad and, nothing can stand in her way. And then this guy ends up, basically wiping the floor with all of her, pet project super ghouls. And just winning them over. So yeah, and before we go any further, I think we should also talk about when the episode actually begins. We get this shot of like kind of going through one of the beaches in Normandy during World War II, and you see all these dead American GIs all over the place. What did you think of that scene? And obviously there's no context at that point, but eventually we'll find out why. But when you found out about it, what was your thoughts about that?
Well, I had two different thoughts. Because I did watch the episode twice. And the first time through, I was watching, and my wife was watching with me, and she looks up and she's like, "Are those World War II soldiers?" She's like, "What is going on?" And I was like, I don't.
Am I in the right show?
Yeah, but I was also like, obviously, we're in France, so my brain immediately was like, well, this has got to be Normandy or one of the beaches they tried to breach on, on D-Day. So
yeah,
I
the
was
beaches
like,
the beaches were all in Normandy, so
right.
There was.
So to me, I was like, I think they might be showing the like the aftermath of like the invasion, at Normandy, and I was like, it doesn't make sense in the context of the show. And I said, but it is a very important thing that happened in France, and it was American soldiers. So I was like trying to find, I was like, well, there's that sort of through line of Americans coming to France to fight for France. And then it goes right into this scene where, Daryl is always referred to as the American. And he's in this moment where, like, Janae is trying to sort of, I'm using air quotes, she's trying to save, France and keep it a certain way, and they're sort of at odds with each other. I don't know. I just, when I didn't know the context, it confused me a little. I liked the imagery because I thought that, it was beautiful. But then once you get the story, then it's obvious why they included it. And when I watched it a second time, I was actually really proud of the show because I was really, really hoping. I mean, if you take an image and if someone like absolutely like zooms in on something, if there's something that shows that figure that they were, pushing in on, if that was
him,
Daryl's grandfather. I mean,
it says Dixon on his dog tag.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't see that unless you like zoom in. It's not an obvious, like you wouldn't have, if you didn't know to zoom in, you wouldn't know. And it's such a tiny detail. So when I watched it the second time, I was like, they're obviously saying to you, I didn't have to zoom in. I'm like, they're obviously saying that this is Daryl's grandfather.
Yeah.
And I don't need to zoom in because if you know what the circumstance was of the story, then why would they go and have the camera sit on anyone else other than the person who we are to assume is Daryl's grandfather? Is the whole point of the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was cool. I would have been okay if we had just had that. But we had like the little bit at the end, which I actually was not a fan of. I did not like that.
Yeah, we'll get there.
We'll get there. But for this standalone, him telling his little story later, and you going, if I hadn't watched it a second time, I just would have been like, that's why they had that scene at the beginning. Okay, I love it.
Explained it, yeah.
I thought it was cool because we don't know a lot about Daryl's history other than those little tidbits that have been given out. So I actually really enjoyed learning more about Daryl's history, and it, when he explained the stuff about, a whole, it's multiple generations of men growing up without a father there.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a perpetual cycle kind of thing happening. So I liked it. I liked those little extra bits of Daryl that we got. Very cool.
What I really enjoyed was the sound design for that Normandy beach shot, because you hear in the background, as they're kind of panning through all of these dead soldiers, you hear someone yelling for a medic, and then it changes and you hear an American voice yelling Dixon, Dixon, and then like the second or third time you hear it, they first of all, they start fading in the crowd of the arena chanting like they were, and then the voice yelling Dixon is now Cadron, and he says that line about "Today is the day you die for my brother," or whatever he said at the end of the episode. Right? And so I thought that was a really, really cool way to do that sound mix, and so it was neat. But I was kind of right with you there when they're showing that scene, and I'm like, for a second I'm like, are we like gonna see like that guy like open his eyes and like he's like a ghoul in like 1944 or something? I'm like, why are they doing this? And so I was a little puzzled by that scene. And then as the episode kept going on, I kept going, why did they show us that World War II scene?
Yeah.
And then finally when he told the story, then I went, oh, that's
right.
why. Okay,
yeah.
Now I get it. So yeah. But anyway, it was just we should mention it because it is kind of key to a lot of the storytelling. So anyway, Daryl and Quinn end up dispatching everything, and Daryl gets ahead, and then Janae gets ahead, and then Janae leaves. And they're gonna try and kill Daryl, but then Fallot shoots the guy that's gonna kill Daryl, and that kind of ends the event, and everyone runs for the exits. Kind of
causes like some commotion, some chaos. Everybody sort of runs, which was helpful because in that chaos, Daryl and Quinn are able to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Yay!
But pretty quickly, Quinn, Daryl sees the wound, and Quinn's like, "What? It's a burn. It's an acid burn. I'm fine. I don't even feel it." And then like the next time you see them, he's like, "Oh, I gotta sit down, man."
Yeah. I'm tired. This is killing me.
And Daryl's just like, "Come on, we gotta go." And Quinn's like, I'm done. And then literally Daryl's like, "Well, you know how you could help me." And my comment that I wrote, and this is just me, is that when the show started and they first saw Quinn, I never ever thought that he would end up being Daryl's right hand man. Too soon?
No, not too soon. Because my take on the whole thing, because he he emotionally has some emotional diarrhea with Daryl, who's like, listen, I just want to fucking go. Can you stop?
I don't care.
Opening up to me. He's like, fine, whatever. So basically, I just put it down as blah, 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 emotionally abusive asshole sees the error of his ways.
And then whack.
Let me get rid of that wrist for you.
Oh, yeah.
It was great.
So now we should just refer from now on to Quinn as Lefty.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I love that, Daryl, even after he, whacks off the hand, that he's still like, Quinn, you still have a purpose in that, you go fight these three guys that are coming down the corridor and buy me some time. And Quinn does. He just runs right at him and smacks one of them right in the head with that big hammer. And, and you have to imagine, I mean, that hand is, even though they did put a belt on as like a tourniquet, it's still got to be bleeding all over the place. So, it was kind of a very, very abrupt departure for Quinn.
Yeah, he was like, I'm out. Bye-bye.
I have nothing more to do with this story, so I'm done.
Yeah, Yeah. It was a little abrupt. I'm wondering, in a regular season of like 8 episodes plus 8 episodes, that moment may have been a little bit more fleshed out, or Quinn may have lasted a little longer, or we may have seen his assault on the soldiers from his perspective, and he may have lasted a little longer with the soldiers and been more of a deterrent. But in the interest of time, that was just sort of like, made this teeny tiny little thing. So, the fact that we even saw him at all when they sort of split off and he's like, and runs at the soldiers, you're like, oh, okay, we know how he dies now, but at least he's, helping head them off a little bit. So, yeah. I did want to talk about, did we jump a little around? Whatever.
We did.
We'll get back to it.
We did jump a little, but yeah.
That's fine. The aftermath of the chaos in the Thunderdome, as it were, is that Isabel and Laurent are tossed into the jail cell. But when they are tossing them into the jail cell, it's a little bit of a scuffle because Laurent is like, no, don't do this. And in that scuffle, Isabel gets the key from the guy, which I thought was a really nice little snag there. And I have to admit, I didn't see it coming. But as soon as she pulled, it's funny because when she pulled the little chain out of her pocket, at first I thought she had the Eiffel Tower thing.
Yeah.
That was his thing. And then I saw that it was an actual like chain, and I was like, oh, she snagged the key. Oh, I love it. Yeah, because you can't introduce a pickpocket in Act 1 and not have a really, really important pocket picked in Act 2. I thought that was
it's Chekhov's pickpocket.
Chekhov's pickpocket. I mean, every Chekhov play had one. Why wouldn't?
And I mean, is this not like, where is the T-shirt that is like pickpocketing none? I mean, that's got to be there somewhere.
I'm
right?
sorry, that is incorrect. Killer none. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's the president of that club. For sure.
Man, yeah.
So obviously they break out of the little jail cell and they're sort of scurrying along. There was one moment where, the natural instinct is no matter what, you sort of press your back up against the wall and very slowly like sort of peek your eye around to see. And there was one moment right away where Isabel was doing that and Laurent was literally standing in the middle of the passageway. He's not able to be seen by around the corner, but he's just like standing almost like right next to her. I'm like, dude, against the wall. Have you no instinct whatsoever?
The kid has spent like 2 minutes outside of the Abbey his whole life. He has no street smarts at all.
Well, yeah, no. If you look up no street smarts in the encyclopedia, his picture is there.
Oh yeah.
But he does sort of redeem himself in a bit. Daryl ends up going back he has a moment where he gets out of the building, bumps into Falou and Emile and Sylvie, and they get his chains off of him. They stay outside and continue sort of fighting or whatever, and he's like, I know where they are, I'll go get them.
Well, yeah, and I think he tells Falou to get one of the cars running, and Falou's like, my uncle owned a garage or something. Everyone's a mechanic in this show, so
yeah.
So that's what they're doing, is they're like getting some sort of vehicle
transport
ready to
so
go.
They can get out of there.
Yeah.
And he's like, they've got to be in the cell area. I know where that is. So he goes back inside, but he goes in like a different way, and he's coming down a corridor, and they're both sort of heading in the same direction, like sort of toward each other. But then there's a gate that's closed, and they're they're trying to figure out like a way to like break down the gate or like break the lock or whatever so they can go through. And a walker comes up, and wouldn't you know it? Of all the walkers and all the places in the world, and it has to be Quinn, of course.
It's Quinn, yeah.
Yeah.
It's Lefty.
Yeah, Lefty. My left-handed daddy is basically who it was. And so obviously he starts attacking Isabel, and Laurent is kind of frozen and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know what to do. And, Quinn is starting to, Zombie Quinn is starting to gain the upper hand, because he appears to be a little bit fast moving too. Like he's a variant, of course. Why wouldn't he be?
Of course.
And so Daryl can't get through. He can't do anything. He takes his sort of like his big weapon there that he came in with, and he hands it to Laurent, and he's like, "You got to do this." He's like, "Do it." He's like, "You need to save Isabel. Do it. Do it. You got to do it. You got to do it." It starts to get a little bit more tense because Quinn is really gaining the upper hand, and Isabel's having a hard time fighting him off. She's having a hard time, and Laurent is just so hesitant to do it. And then finally, the only way he can get him to do it is he's like, "God will forgive you. Sometimes you have to do horrible things, and God will forgive you." And Laurent's he has a look on his face like, "I'm not sure I believe you. I don't know if God will forgive me," but he does know that God won't forgive him if he had an opportunity to save Isabel and did not take it. So he takes the big axe, and he brings it down on his own father's head, and that won't make him have to go to therapy at all. And saves Isabel. So yeah, hooray!
I what I liked about that scene is it in many ways is a callback to the dream I'm under the water moment that Daryl had 2 episodes ago, where he's in kind of almost the same location, and he's separated from Laurent by that metal gate again, and he can't get to him. And so I kind of like that they brought that back. And again, we never really get too much of an idea of what emotionally is going on with Daryl Dixon.
Not usually, no.
It would have been nice to have him kind of have that oh crap moment of, this is kind of what I dreamt of a bit ago.
Yeah. Where have I seen this scene? I'm having deja vu.
Yeah. Well, and also, again, this kid's supposed to be the Messiah, so maybe this is gonna help convince Daryl that there's something to that, if he's starting to get visions that are coming true or whatever. You know what I mean? It's just there could have been some interesting things they could have done there to kind of play up that. But in any case, I appreciate the fact that they at least called back to it. Even if it wasn't exactly the same setup, it was similar enough that you would be like, oh, whoa, that was just like that weird, crazy I'm drowning dream I had yesterday or whenever,
It was a nice callback.
Yeah. So, it was kind of, it's a lot to ask a kid to not just, to go brain someone with an axe, but the fact that it's, and by the way, it's the guy you just found out was your dad. Yeah. That's quite a bit. And then after he does it, or later on, when I think Isabel asks him how he's doing or something, he, kind of says, he really wasn't my dad, and so he kind of was already distancing himself and being like, he was my dad, but not really, he was, so, but yeah, it was a real, kind of a moment for Laurent to kind of finally do something that's not annoying. So I like that.
Yeah. Agreed. And like you said, the wording that he used when he was like, he wasn't really my father. I thought that was, it said a lot. And I think he was also trying to tell everybody that he was okay with doing what he had to do, that he doesn't have any extra trauma because it was his father. He just has the regular trauma of, I just killed a zombie. And that shouldn't be what's happening when you're 12 years old. but hey, whatever. So yeah, I liked that he was he took control of the narrative of that moment and was like, basically like, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. he wasn't really my dad anyway, so I there's no extra trauma with this one, I promise. Let's move on. Let's get out of here is basically his, I don't want to, and he, there's been all of these moments where it seems like he's getting inspiration from Daryl. And if choking off your emotions and not talking about how you feel is something that you can glean from Daryl, then, I mean, that sounds about right. Because that's how he rolls.
Pretty much, yeah. The man keeps everything firmly locked away.
Yeah, he is a desert island, so pretty much.
It's where he's my cold and dead inside role model.
Right. And, yeah, it's just going to make, insert comment about not being very cleanly, because he's just not.
Well, I definitely bathe more than he does. There's no doubt. But, in terms of just emotionally, he is what I aspire to be. So. Yes,
he's a role model for sure. They do get away in the car. Obviously, he has the conversation about, he wasn't really my dad. That was in the car when they get away. Mm-hmm. And, there's a couple of cute little moments in the car. There's, because Sylvie decides to go with them to the nest, mm-hmm. and Emile and Falou stay behind because this is their home. And, there's a cute little moment where Emile says, you go where you're needed. That's part of the, working for the cause is where you're needed, you go. And basically like, you go do what you have to do. Maybe someday we'll see each other again, and gives her a nice kiss and whatever.
But give me some sugar before you go.
Right. Please kiss me. None. Mm-hmm. And
that kid must be loving it.
Right.
He's like, wow, I'm like corrupting a nun.
I know. I'm famous. And Emile and Falou go back to their people, so it's just the original four in the car when they're heading towards the nest. And, Sylvie's obviously struggling, and Daryl has a cute moment where he tries to make her feel better, is like Falou won't let anything happen to him.
You know he's going to be fine, right?
Yeah, he'll be fine. Yeah. And Sylvie just makes a comment where she's like, have you ever been in love? Mm-hmm. And Daryl is like, I'm
not going to answer that one.
I'm not going to answer that on the grounds that it may incriminate me and alienate an entire section of the fan base.
You could almost hear him say internally going, a big chunk of the fan base thinks I have.
Yes. And a whole other big chunk of the fan base doesn't think I have. So, I'm going to piss somebody off either way, so I'm just going to keep my trap shut.
I kept hoping he would mention Princess Leia, but he did not. He doesn't say anything. He just
it would have been cute if he'd had a moment where it was like, well, when I was 10, I was in love with, Crystal, who lived down the street or whatever. Right. That'd have been a cute little thing.
Right. She ended up leaving me for Sean Cassidy.
Yeah.
Sean Cassidy.
Yeah.
Gary Glitter.
Gary Glitter. Oh man, that movie. Anyway, it's interesting because I came across some posts on the Twitter where there's people who are in the Daryl and Carol camp who are kind of angry at the way that Daryl's been portrayed, and one of the things I saw somebody complain about, which I thought was interesting, is they said that they were upset that AMC feels like they have to portray this, man who's clearly in his, late 40s, early 50s, mm-hmm. as some sort of man-child, that he's not in touch with his emotions, that he can't talk about those kinds of things. And it's funny because they're basically saying like, obviously they believe in the Daryl and the Carol relationship. And so they feel like he should have been like, yes, I have been in love. And it was this woman named Carol and I need to get back to her and blah, blah, blah. But to me, because I don't don't want to say I don't support the ship. I just don't see it personally. I feel like in that moment, I think Daryl not saying anything doesn't show him being like some uncommunicative man-child, as someone said. I think of it more like when you think of how Daryl was in the first couple of seasons, first of all, he would just like grunt. The fact that he even prefaced before Sylvie even said, "Have you ever been in love?" His first instinct was to try and make her feel better about the whole thing, which kind of answers your question. If he recognizes that she's in love and is struggling and is having a hard time, and he knows that the thing to say is to make her feel better, what's he going to do to make her feel better? Yes, I've been in love and I've had my heart trampled on by either, whether you subscribe to the Carol thing, she went off and she was with Ezekiel for years and, was a mother and had children and, like you could consider that like breaking his heart. Or you could look at Leah. Leah like turned against you and literally broke your heart and your people.
And then tried to hunt you down and kill you.
Exactly. Or you could look at Connie, which is, some people might think that there's sort of like two ships passing in the night, like never a good time for them, like that kind of love relationship, as it were. So
and I would almost put Beth in there too.
Right. All of these moments where he's felt love, feelings of love in the manly way towards these women, if you could pick any one of them or all four, they all have elements of tragedy to them.
They do.
And he was in a moment where he was trying to make Sylvie feel better. So what about any four of those relationships that he had with those four very different ladies? What about any of those relationships could he have said in the moment to have made her feel better? Nothing. I mean, half of them are dead. 50% of the ladies are dead.
Yeah.
The two that are alive, maybe there's possibilities with either one of them, but they are literally on the other side of an ocean right now. So, like, that's, I don't know how any of that would make her feel better.
Right, yeah. It's certainly not going to be comforting.
Yeah, I feel like his moment of comforting was saying what he said, and I think he weighed out, like, the people that he has had feelings of love for, and in that moment decided not to say anything, and then doesn't the car break down not long after that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so he's sort of saved
that,
by the car, kind of.
Right.
So if the car had kept going forward, maybe he would have changed his mind and been like, I have been in love, but there were some painful moments, and I'm trying to make you feel better, so I don't want to tell you about them, and they're hard for me to talk about. But he didn't have that opportunity because he took a second, he thought about it, because you can see he's thinking about telling her something.
Yeah.
And then the car starts to break down. So yeah. I don't know, like, I think people just get so excited about the stupid Daryl and Carol thing. They get very, very territorial about them. It's a rabbit hole to go down that rabbit hole. And I'm not saying you shouldn't love the characters and think that they belong together. Think those things, absolutely. But like, it can get ugly.
Yeah, I think the message really to pass along to everyone is that it's okay to love your shows. Just don't love your shows.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Anyway, so they're in the car. He has this cute moment with Sylvie. And then the car starts to break down. So they're stopped for a bit. And then he has another couple of cute moments with Isabel while he's trying to fix the car. And while they're fixing the car, Sylvie and Laurent are like sleeping in the back. They're taking a little nap.
Yep.
And so he and Isabel are chatting, and that's when the story about his grandfather comes out, which I thought was natural. It was in the moment, and And I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because the people that make the complaint about, Daryl can't talk about love because he, AMC paints him as this like overgrown man baby who can't deal with his emotions. And I'm like, yeah. And like 5 minutes later, he's opening up to this person about his, non-existent father, but it wasn't his father's fault because his father had no father either. And it's just a cycle and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's opening up to your emotions if you tell somebody that stuff. I don't know. I liked the story. What did you think about the story about his grandfather?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's sort of, I think it's the biggest window into what Daryl is doing internally we're ever going to get is that moment,
Agreed.
The man he just doesn't open up.
No, it's not his style at all.
No, not at all. And I think a lot of it he just considers to be irrelevant to the current, you know what I mean? This girl's asking him questions. Why? Why is telling about my past what's it going to do to improve our situation? Nothing. You know what I mean? And so he's just like, I'm not gonna play that game, And so it was kind of nice to have that moment where he felt comfortable enough with her that he could tell that story, and you kind of wonder, did he ever tell Rick that? Did he ever tell Carol that, that about his granddad? I wouldn't think so.
Probably not.
And I wonder because I haven't seen a lot of this, but clearly there are people out there that are like, oh well, I mean, Isabel and Daryl, that's like the new couple, right? That they're going to ship them, and I kind of got the sense that Daryl doesn't see her in a romantic way, not because she's not an attractive person, but because she's a nun,
right?
And so I think he kind of feels comfortable sharing that kind of stuff with her because of that. You know what I mean? That there's no romantic implications here. She's not interested in me in that way, in a romantic way. She's just concerned as a friend. And so, you know what I mean? I think he has that kind of thought during this whole scene, and that's what allows him to kind of open up some of those locked doors inside and let some of this stuff out.
Yeah, agreed.
So, and I always love the scenes where one character is working underneath the car and the other character is somewhere in the room or the area by the car, and then that person disappears.
Silently, by the way. Absolutely
yes.
Silently.
No, none of those dudes made a sound, right? No one was able to go, or nothing.
Even when they do the whole like, don't make a sound, they didn't make a sound when they told
them to not
all
make
of them
a sound,
to not make a sound.
Well, see, they had signs. There's a deleted scene
where
like literally Quadron did like the Andy Lincoln from the Christmas movie, when he has all the signs for Keira Knightley at the end, what I mean? It's
Love Actually.
From Love Actually, yeah. So that's what he did. He went up and he went, "Hello, my name is Quadron. Don't make a noise, or we'll kill you."
Exactly.
And then they went, okay, but it reminded me a lot of Diary of the Dead, where the one of them is underneath the camper trying to fix it, and I think the Amish guy's walking around in the background, and then the movie kind of fools you because you see feet, underneath the edge of the camper, and it's actually a ghoul that's gotten in and almost ends up eating the guy that's trying to fix the car, because he assumes it's still the Amish dude, and they remember the Amish dude couldn't really talk. Anyway, he wrote on the little chalkboard anyway, but yeah, so I thought that was kind of a fun little moment, and of course he comes out, and there's Quadron, who we kind of skipped over that scene where Janae kind of tasks him with basically finding all of those people and killing them all.
Yeah.
She is like, I want them all dead. There's no bring them back. There's no prisoners here. It's here's your chance to get revenge for your brother. Go do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a great line in that moment too, which I didn't get a chance to chat about, but she they were talking about, how did people, the big thing, how did a gun get in there and da 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 da, and what happened, and one of the guys there was like, but people,
he's like I gave the orders to do something.
It should have gone this way because I gave the orders. And she stops in the hallway. They're walking along and she stops and she's like, no, I give the orders. You carry them out. So she was like very, very clearly saying he was trying to like say, people should be doing them because I say so. And she's like, no. I said so.
Yeah.
You just passed the message along. It's
That's
not
right.
you that gave those orders. They're not your orders. So I thought that was a really nice little tactical little thing that Janae said.
Loved it. Oh yeah, I did too. So anyway, she then tasks Kadron with wiping him out, and so once more he is Gerard that is pursuing the bread stealer, and off we go.
He's not singing though, which is
thank God,
right?
Although I got to tell you, it was really weird in the behind the scenes documentary. They interview him and he's sitting there and he's smiling and just the most pleasant, fun, normal guy, and you're just like, no, you're like the mean, grumpy bad guy. What are you doing? So,
I'm sorry, I can't accept a version of you where you're smiling. That's not acceptable.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I always kind of, I find that those moments to be very jarring, particularly when they're like on set and like the actors are like in costume, because he has like the full tattoo on his face and the whole, soldier getup on, and he's clearly they grabbed him in between setups or something and asked him a question or two, and so it's very jarring because you're like, that's not you,
Yeah.
So. But
definitely.
So anyway, he ends up going off and he catches them at that thing, and then of course the guy that is in charge of the other guards, hands him the gun and goes, "You get to kill them because you're the one that's Mr. Revenge," and then he goes, "And start with the kid."
Yeah. and in this crazy moment, Daryl is pleading with them, take me, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Because he's just begging because he doesn't see a way out. There's too many of them. There's too many weapons. Somebody's going to get shot no matter what happens if he tries to hit the gun or whatever. And so there's a desperate moment there. And there's this great moment where Kadron has the gun and he's pointing it right at Laurent. And Laurent is obviously scared, very, very scared. But he takes a moment to tell him, he says, God loves you. And whatever is going on inside Kadron's head and in his heart, that worked. That's all it took was he, the little Messiah boy told him that God loves you. And that's all Kadron needed. And he shot all of the other soldiers.
Wipes
and
them
then
out.
Basically gave them advice on how to get where they're going. And that's that.
It's clearly something that scene is clearly a setup for season 2, because he finds the pocket watch and he sees the image of the nest that's like engraved on the inside or printed on the inside, and he recognizes, he's like, oh, you're heading for this place, that's the nest, and he's like, it's only like a day away from here if you march, if you walk north. But that's going to come into play because Janae ends up catching him, and she's like, where are they going? And he's like, I'm not saying anything, or I don't know.
Right.
And they're like, you know what? Eventually you're going to talk. And so clearly, eventually he's going to talk, and then they're going to know where the nest is.
Of course. Well, of course they will. Yeah.
Yeah. But he shoots the 3 guys with the pistol, and then the guy that was in charge, he ends up shooting him with a musket or a shotgun, a sawed-off shotgun. I mean, he just wipes those people out. The only thing about it, this was the one moment where I was surprised, and that is, I thought it was a very false moment for him. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand why this happened, because there'd be no show without it. But I'm sorry, he kills Daryl Dixon right there. That guy.
Yeah. Like, I'm okay with not killing the kid.
Right.
And I'm certainly not going to kill a couple of nuns.
Yeah, but
because
Daryl
God
Dixon
sees me. But Dixon, you can go.
You're dead. Yeah, I mean, this is the guy. Remember, this is the guy that we saw in episode 1 beat that old con man guy to death.
Yeah.
Because he lipped off to him.
Yeah.
So clearly, this character has very little regard for human life anyway. And he also, in the first episode, when he found out that Laurent was at the Abbey, his first instinct was, well, we'll take that kid with him, and almost like a Negan, I gotta protect kids kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so I totally am with I'm not killing a kid. I'm not gonna do that. Right. And like you said, and you know what? I'm not gonna shoot a couple of unarmed nuns either. Okay, that's just not in the cards. But again, it rang very hollow to me that he'd be like, not today, Dixon. So I'm like, okay, so that means you're gonna then kill him some other day?
Yeah. That's the part because that's the part that confused me. I can understand, because Daryl is the reason why this kid needs to get to the nest. Mm-hmm. And so if you believe in Laurent as the Messiah, or if you have any inkling that, he talks to God or whatever, Daryl is his protector, maybe you let him live. But the whole not today is the part that confused me, because I'm like, listen, you still hate this guy. Mm-hmm. So I would have liked it better if there'd been more explanation, like, not today. You're responsible for his safety, but I will come and find you later once he's to safety. That makes a little more sense. But to just willy-nilly be not today, I'm like, so tomorrow you'll come find me? Or do you mean next week?
Well, what's on your calendar? I have Tuesday at 2. Is that good for you? I mean, yeah. It's
take out your Palm Pilot and we'll schedule this in.
Yeah, right. I mean, for it to really, I felt, and again, never going to happen because the show's not called The Walking Dead Cadron, but a much more believable, from my standpoint, outcome there is he shoots the guys that he's with, he then kills Daryl, and then he takes the nuns and the kid to the nest and sees that they're safe.
Right.
And then he goes back to Janae and says, yeah, I killed him, but I couldn't find the kid. He stayed behind and rear guarded it, and and he took out all the other guys, and by the time I finally got the drive, and bring his head back to show you did it. You know what I mean? You could bring proof and then see if she buys it. But yeah, that whole moment took me out of a lot of the good vibes of the episode, because I was just like, really, you're not gonna kill him? I mean, and again, I get it. There has to be a season 2, right? I mean, you can't kill the main guy, but it just rang very hollow, very false.
Yeah, that was probably my biggest moment of the episode, where I was like, here's someone whose lines and his situations that he's being given don't connect with what we've been given of his character so far. It doesn't make sense that Cadron would do that. He's driven by revenge. He's driven by these feelings of anger. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would have been more believable if he had let Laurent live, shot all those guys, and then had this moment with Daryl where he was so inflamed by Daryl and was not paying attention to his surroundings, and then say Sylvie or Isabel knocks him down, and they knock him out, and then they're able to get away,
or something. Yeah,
something like that. You know what I mean? That would be more believable. But him relenting on Daryl just felt so hollow. It felt wrong. I agree with you. I think that this is sort of telegraphing what will be a season 2 moment, but I'm curious if what they're going to do is the old trope of he's taken captive, obviously, and he's going to be tortured by Janae and all of her people to try and find out where the nest is.
Mm-hmm.
And then what'll happen is they're going to like try and stage an assault on the nest, and he's going to try and help the other side.
So he might become a convert?
Maybe. I don't know. It depends. It depends on how they play that moment. But I mean, that's what I'm sort of expecting. You know, he had this moment of hesitation, at least where Laurent is concerned. So I think if he finds out that they're doing an all-out assault, you know, on this beautiful area of France, you know, the spot where the nest is, the Mont Saint-Michel, is just gorgeous. And it's been there for quite some time. I don't know the full history of it, but it's lasted.
It's designed to resist the kind of siege that those people are going to be doing. So,
exactly.
Yeah, you know, exactly. It's like good luck.
Yeah.
You know.
So I think all of those factors would get Cadron to feel sympathetic towards, you know, the cause that is at the nest, you know, to a degree. But I still don't believe that he gives Daryl a pass, no matter what.
Yeah, see that? Yeah, you're right. I agree. I have no problem with him somehow converting and believing the kid's the future and the Messiah and all that, but he's still going to kill Daryl. I mean, what if he at some point runs into the it was Maribel, right, who was the old man's kid or niece or whatever, the other con woman?
Yeah, the other con person, because technically she's the one that killed his brother.
I think it was Annabelle,
that's right. I think you're right. But I wonder if there'll be some moment where he just literally finds out that Daryl is not the one who killed his brother, so all of his revenge has been misplaced. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, it could be, but I mean, let's be honest. Daryl mostly killed him. Mostly. I mean, he ran him through with the thing, and then he like wounded him, and then she ran. Maybe you're right. I have to go back and watch it, but I thought that Daryl kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there have been several characters that they've introduced and then got rid of, because if you notice, our singer was nowhere to be seen in this episode.
Right.
And and same thing with the con gal was only in episode 1. We never saw her again. So is there going to be a moment here in the future where Cadron's going to hear the truth from someone not named Daryl Dixon, where he has a chance of believing it? You know, and be like, oh well, so that guy actually didn't kill my brother. Ooh, interesting.
Right.
You know, so I mean, you're right. It maybe that's going to be the thing that starts the conversion.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, this is a guy who the whole episode has had to be restrained at points from killing Daryl Dixon, and yet when he has him dead to rights with no chance of, you know, a dumpster to save him, he's like, no, you know what? I'm not going to shoot you today. I was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
Not my favorite episode.
Yeah. All right. So from there, they, you know, follow his advice and go along the coast and go north, whatever, and they make it to the nest. And probably some of the most beautiful, like, cinematography we've had this whole series. Just the imagery of the nest. Like I said, it's the area called Mont Saint-Michel, and it's just beautiful. It's really just so gorgeous, and it's funny because it reminds me a lot of Minas Tirith in Lord of the Rings, where sort of like its own little island, its own little sort of fortress or whatever. And and I'm wondering if that is one of the reasons that they are working on these sort of super zombies or whatever. Are they creating zombies that are difficult to stop? Like, let's say they are fast, hard to stop, and have like metal on their heads and they can climb.
Yeah.
And it's not like killing people. Just think of that image from World War Z where they're all climbing that wall, you know. Is that the kind of thing that Janae is trying to do so that she can gain control of the nest and drive all those people out?
Yeah, or just wipe them out entirely.
Right, wipe them out or drive them out, whichever happens first.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought of it while we were recording. I'm like, if we're making them so that they are indestructible, via the head, and they are super fast, and also if they can, climb a little bit, then maybe that's what they're trying to do.
As long as they, don't decide to like kill each other, you're set.
Yeah. They'll have to change that part of the serum. Oh, that instinct to kill the zombie right next to you and tear his jaw out. Yeah, we'll need to, we'll do some more research and try and fix that. Yeah. So all of the stuff at the nest. Tell me how you feel. I thought that it was visually amazing. I like the leader. I think he's cool.
The guy from Hoboken.
Yeah, the guy from Hoboken, strangely. But I felt like everything else, it was the entire time they were at the nest, the entire time that Daryl's at the nest, it was literally just the, please stay, I have to go. Please stay, I have to go. Back and forth, back and forth. And it started to make me angry because if it's one thing that's important in the apocalypse is everybody talks about, you lose a lot of your blood family. So your found family is very important to you because you all sort of hold each other tight because you've lost so many members of your blood family. So there are people that are back in the Commonwealth and Alexandria that are Daryl's family. They are his chosen family. They're people he's known since the beginning, people like Carol.
Right.
And I know she's off on her little adventure, but, Maggie as well, he's known since the beginning. And it's when people ask over and over again, it's like they're not hearing him. They're not understanding how important these people are to him. I don't know. It makes me want him to stay less. Like the more they ask or the more they bring it up with him, the more I'm like turned off by the idea of him staying there at all because they're just not hearing him. Right. Where he's like, oh, I've got a family. I've got people. And they're like, well, you have people here too. I'm like, yes, that's great. But they're people I've spent a few months with. And yes, I have a connection with them, but I'll send you a carrier pigeon. Like these are people that I have lived and died for.
For years.
I've put my life on the line for people for 12 years. I've known you for like 3 months or however long he's been there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you cannot compare the two. It doesn't make how I feel about you guys any less. He has a lot of affection for Laurent. He has a lot of affection for Isabel and Sylvie and these people that he's met, like Falou. I think he really, really likes Falou. I think he was really sad to lose Aslan, but he understands that, losing people, which is what would happen if he left, he would lose those people. Losing people is part of your life these days. Right. And sort of compartmentalizing your feelings about it is something you have to do. I hated it. I hated every time each different person was like, well, Laurent is really close to you.
And I'm like, hoping you stay.
I'm like, that's great. But like, I understand it would be different if they said something like, it's a really long journey. And you may never make it. Is it worth the risk to go? And if he says yes, you have to respect that and just say, you will always have a home here. I don't know if you would ever have the opportunity to ever make it in this direction again, but please know you will always have a home here.
Until Janae shows up with the Supergirls and kills us all. Yes.
Right. And you know that because he's helping train them and all of that stuff, you know that part of it is a very selfish ask because they're hoping to keep, you know, you the smart American who's really good at, you know, fighting and stuff like that. And it's like it's kind of selfish, and he doesn't want to stay. If he wanted to stay, he would have said so.
Exactly.
So them asking over and over and over again is like, dude, it's no. Like, even if he had like mild thoughts about staying, it's like the more you ask, the more I'm determined to go home.
Right.
I don't know. That's how I felt about all of the scenes on the nest. So how about you? How did you feel about all of our time on the nest?
Oh yeah, whatever. I fast forwarded through it the second time. Yeah, I just again, I respected Isabel that she kind of made her pitch about home is kind of where you hang your hat and all that, and he kind of went, no, I made a promise to you and I fulfilled it. I made a promise to my family back in America, and now I'm gonna do that. And Isabel, after she kind of said her piece and everything, she went, well, it was very nice to meet you, and left. I mean, she did finally drop it, right? I mean, she played the Laurent card of like, oh, you're not even going to say goodbye to him. And, and inside I'm like, no, he's annoying. Why would you do that? But she did. She kind of went, okay. And then she, notice it was not her standing on top of the Nazi bunker at the end of the episode yelling Daryl's name. She was nowhere to be seen, right?
Right.
The part about that whole sequence that I, for a moment had like, ooh, that'd be cool, was when the guy from Hoboken told him, there's a guy coming from Dover and he'll take you to England, and then from England you'll get a ship that you can, make it across the Atlantic. And I thought, wow, wouldn't that be cool if next season they're shooting in England? And following Daryl on his story, but I'm like, yeah, he's never leaving. They're clearly he is, French for this series. So
right.
But that was kind of my big takeaway. I'm like, well, that would have been cool. That when he goes over, we get to see England and what does the UK look like after 10, 11, 12 years of the ZA.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I appreciated the fact that it looks like the nest doesn't have electricity. Lots of candles.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, that's a little more believable to me. That oh yeah, they don't have a generator somewhere and they're not running fuel and all this stuff. So I like that, but yeah, I agree with you. It was the more that. People are like it'd be really ashamed to lose you. That's all that's doing is reinforcing to Daryl's like, yeah, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Thanks for coming. It's like, look, we had a deal and I lived up to my end and now it's your turn to live up to your end and help me get off this rock.
Yeah. And he even admits that Lo Sang, was that the guy's name? The leader?
The guy from Hoboken, I think that was his name.
Lo Sang. I'm pretty sure that's his name. And when he's talking to Daryl, he literally says, like, you delivered for us. We deliver on our promise, too. And that's when he tells you about the boat and everything, right?
Yeah.
But it's like he acknowledges that they are in his debt. So why would he stay? Like, I don't understand that. Like, if you acknowledge that it is so important for him to get back to America, that he would even consider, taking a fisherman's boat from here to England, and then from England it'll take him to Newfoundland, and then from Newfoundland he's just going to have to figure it out. Newfoundland is like directly above Maine, so he'd have to.
He would be on North America, so
correct. So
he could
just have to
walk
figure it
or
out.
Drive, or right.
Yeah, and it's not like there's customs at the border or anything like that.
Well, but those Newfies, they might be enjoying this whole ZA thing.
It's possible. Anything's possible. But if he acknowledges the fact that this would seem like a attractive option to Daryl to be able to get home, then why even, and if you went through the trouble to set it all up for him, why then would you ask him to stay?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. The whole thing was I just didn't like it. So he leaves anyway. No, go ahead.
And I was just gonna say again. I mean, if this was the end of the show, okay, fine. But I mean, all the fans, everybody knows there's a season 2. So why are they wasting our time with all of this, like, attempts at pulling at Daryl's heartstrings about you should really stay? It's like, clearly he's staying. Why are we having this conversation?
Yeah. Anyway, let's get away from that, because they were only at the nest for a short time.
Yeah.
And he does decide to leave. So he makes his way, follows the directions, and makes his way to where he needs to meet up with these fishermen. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens to be right by Normandy Beach. And he makes his way through all of the tombstones, and he's looking around for what appears to be just a short period of time. Man, you could have added in some time lapse in there. It would have been so easy. Just a couple of cuts to make it look like he's moved around, and it's really looked at, a bunch of them. Because if you've ever seen that monument, there are thousands of crosses there because they had so many losses that day. Mm-hmm. But he happens to find the one that says William Dixon from Georgia. Yeah. And it was like, and to me, I felt like it cheapened the story that he told Isabel, and like taking that Isabel moment and connecting it to the opening scene, the cold open. It was too much. It was too much, when I saw the American flag, I was like, oh, an American flag. Like, and then I was like, oh, does that mean he's near Normandy? Oh, and then I was, son of a bitch. Like, it would have been different if he came upon it and just had like a moment and looked at all of the tombstones, and just like his eyes got a little teary, and then he sees the boat and then he goes, you know what I mean? It's not the coming upon the cemetery that bothered me so much as it was that he actually found the tombstone, and that flag is in really, really good shape for having not been changed out for 12 years. Yes, it's a little threadbare on the edges, but it's not bad.
I was going to ask you about that, because that was my first thought, where I'm like, really? The flag is still up? Because you have to imagine that, it's been up since, the end. And it survived like 14 or 13 years of the weather on the coast of France, where you have all the salt air. And I'm like, really? Yeah. Again, neat visual, but I'm like, I'm not sure that's going to make it that far.
I'm not sold. It would have been such a cool visual if it was just like a little like remnant. Like, what if they just had like, like a vertical piece that's only like a few inches, and there's just some old fringe like flapping in the breeze, like just a hint of like the stripes and maybe one star. So you could be like, that looks kind of like an old, it looks like 3 inches of American flag, and then to see the rest of the cemetery. But yeah, to have like, and it was a full-size flag.
And it was, like you said, the ends were kind of tattered, and it definitely had some fading, colors had faded. But I think the answer to that question is that most television producers understand that we're idiots, and that if they would have done that, they would have been bombarded with people going, well, what flag was that? I don't get it. So they're just like, no. Understand. Yeah, so they're like, we have to hit you over the head with it and just go for the obvious. But and I think just for clarification, Normandy is a area of northwestern France.
Okay.
And on D-Day, the Americans and the British landed on 5 separate beaches in Normandy. So there was not like the Normandy beach. You know what I'm saying? It's like There was Omaha Beach, there was Juneau, there was Utah, there was Sword, there was a whole bunch that had their special little code names. And I agree, him finding the grave is ridiculous. Not unexpected though, because as soon as he started walking, I'm like, well, he's gonna find it.
Oh, of course he
knew
is.
it.
As soon as he
You knew
started
it.
looking at them individually
Yeah.
and trying to find them, I'm like, well, he's gonna find it.
Yeah. I mean,
Or else
clearly
why
he
film
is.
this?
But
Yeah.
right. But I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it. A part of me kind of likes the kind of the resolution of the grandfather scene, because when he tells the story to Izzy, she's like, wow, he gave up his life to save France, and he downplays it like, no, it's more of just he wasted his life. And there's no sense of pride. There's no sense of, wow, did he make quite a sacrifice? He's lamenting the fact that he abandoned his pregnant wife and future child to go gallivanting off to France and so on. And then when he finally sees the grave, we get a sniffle from Daryl, right? We get I'm not crying, you're crying, that
yeah,
kind of thing.
right.
And you get the sense that, oh, you know what, he does see that this was a sacrifice and that it was noble and all that stuff. And that's great. And the one little part of me inside that still is not entirely cold and dead loved that moment.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm just like you. I'm like, oh, come on. There are, first of all, there are multiple cemeteries in France, American cemeteries, that have not just people that died on D-Day, but just people that died in France during the war.
Right.
And if you notice, the very first grave he looks at is like a guy who is like a bombardier. So he was on a bomber, and his death date is June 26th, 1944, which is like 3 weeks after D-Day. So again, it's a general cemetery, but there are several of them. It's not just one, and they're huge, and they're all crosses like that either have a cross or they have the Star of David if the person was Jewish, or they have other things if they're they were not a Christian religion, and you literally need to like find either the service center where there's a map and a guide and a book that shows you exactly what row and what section. You know what I mean? It's not, you can't just be like, well, let's just kind of start here and start walking and say, I mean, you could do it, but it'll take you months, it'll take you weeks to do it. And so that was definitely ridiculous. But again, part of it for me emotionally, I'm like, okay, that's a good payoff.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it took forever for them to find the one grave in Saving Private Ryan, and I mean that was the whole point of the show.
That was the whole point of the damn movie. Yeah, that's right. And they're like people there to help you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was no one to help Daryl, and they were all worn because no one had been keeping up with them. The ones that are there right now, those are cleaned and kept pristine.
Oh yeah.
Because it's two things. It's a cemetery. It's also a monument almost.
It's a memorial. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's treated with so much love and respect. But 12 years of no care, and it's like he's like, oh, I can see the word Dixon from a mile away.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you're wondering like, well, what if there was another Dixon from Georgia?
Yeah. I mean, William is a pretty common name.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true.
But let's not go down that rabbit hole because I'm sure. Oh, geez. Yeah. So he sees the boat. He signals the boat, and then a bunch of walkers come up out of like the tall grass, which was you included it in your notes. I didn't mention it as much, but the visuals are pretty cool of them just sort of like Michael Myers like sitting up.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like one from the left, one from the right, couple behind. I mean, it's like clearly he's like in a ghoul minefield, where he walked in. And the whole thing begins with Daryl, again, being very un-Daryl, where, that boat is like several miles offshore. They're not going to hear you if you yell.
Yeah.
I don't get me wrong, I understand it's a very human thing to be like, hey, I'm over here, type thing. But it's like, Daryl, come on, man, you're smarter than this.
Yeah.
And you'd already seen the one ghoul that was like stuck in a tree, when he was approaching the cemetery. So and you have to at least prepare yourself for the idea that, hey, you know what, this grass that's like 5 feet high, there could be ghouls in there. Right? Because we're in the
Right.
zombie apocalypse right now. I mean, it's just possible that they're. So I thought it was a very un-Daryl moment for him to yell. But, again, cool visual. They all kind of stand up, and then, Daryl gets out the Morning Star and the trench knife and goes to town. And if you're playing the kills game, he scored like 100 points right there. And I like that he kind of varied it a little, and sometimes he'd like give him an uppercut, and other times he would just smack him with the Morning Star, and other times he'd stab him with the trench knife, and then he kind of knocked the legs out of one and caused it to roll into a couple. I mean, he was doing lots of cool Daryl moves, and all the time he's moving to the beach, right? He's moving closer to where the boat is coming in. Again, because he's leaving, and then just as he's kind of out there and ready and like preparing himself, that's when I had the biggest really moment of the episode.
All you hear is you don't see, Daryl, and you're like, son of a bitch, kid.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Yeah,
Mila Laurent.
and then he turns around and Laurent is like on top of one of the bunkers, the concrete bunkers, or the remains of a concrete bunker. And my thought was like, kid, you better hope he comes back to help you.
Yeah.
Because there's like about 15 ghouls that are closing in on your position, and you better. It's like if Daryl just like gets in the water and leaves, you really better start praying.
God. Yeah, you better hope that you have the ear of God in this moment.
Oh yeah.
Oh jeez. And so he got between a rock and a hard place, and that's how the episode ends. Is him like not making a definitive choice one way or the other. Like, do I go home to my family and friends that I miss and love, and let Laurent be eaten by zombies, or do I miss out on the boat trip and go save the kid? Now, here's the thing: they didn't say that they only are coming for him. They are fishermen, so they may fish in those waters. And he made it seem like they come on a regular basis.
Right.
So he could always do this another time. Like, I'll do it next week. I'll save the kid now.
Right.
But even so,
the boat was far enough away. He could have gone in there and taken care of all those ghouls and still gotten on the damn boat. So.
Right. Yeah.
But I kind of got the sense that he decided. I didn't think it was quite as ambiguous as that. I think that he very much was like, oh, crap, all right, I gotta save the kid.
Gotta go save the kid. Yeah. And once that's over, we get, of course, our final Carol moment, which we already talked a little bit about. And I liked the I guess I want to say like this. I don't want to say the surprising nature of it, but I wasn't expecting them to show Carol like a long scene like that. Like maybe like a little teaser of just her or something like that. Like that would have been interesting at the end. But I guess my surprise was I wasn't. I mean, I saw the clip before the show aired, but the clip itself, like, it's a really long scene. I wasn't
like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And there are some parallels with some other scenes. I mean, seeing Carol like that with a real sort of douchey bro with her arms in the air like that. This is a stance we've seen before, but you're like, Carol's gonna get out of it because she will. But yeah, I guess,
first of all,
I don't have anything else to add to that scene that we haven't already talked about. How about you?
I think as much as I am I just really have a hard time believing there's still cars working, and everything. I loved the fastback Mustang. That was cherry. That was really. I mean, it's like, and as soon as we were talking about this before we started recording, and it literally, it's like as soon as you see that car, it starts on Daryl's motorcycle, and then you see, Dr. Douchebag is driving it, right, and then coming up behind him very quickly is this car. And as soon as they saw the car, I'm like, well, that's Carol. I mean, it was automatic. You knew that was her.
Yeah,
And
no question.
And it's like, yep. Oh, she's clearly in action mode because she's driving a muscle car.
Yeah.
You know.
I do want to say one sort of logistical thing that I understand. It's a TV show and you got to do what you got to do. But the only place in Maine where they would have a sign that says "Welcome to Freeport" would be on an interstate. Yeah. And in Maine, there is no interstate where it's just 2 lanes like that. There just doesn't exist. And I want to say, for the sake of argument too, because we literally were just in Freeport in September when we were in Maine, and we went through Freeport. Freeport is the home base of LL Bean. It's the that's where the mothership is. And it's not really like a store, it's more like a campus. That place is huge.
So did you go by the sign that said population 7 dead?
No, we did not, because that sign doesn't exist.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
that's
and it's
interesting.
Also not. It's interesting because it's like it doesn't, unless they're going for the whole like this is the sign that Freeport itself made, because Freeport is a really big town. It's right on the coast. Mm-hmm. It's about the same size as like Portland, and it's got to be the same size of Augusta, which is the capital, Right. So it's like, I don't know. It looked like kind of like it's trying to make it look like sort of like a homey, like homemade kind of sign. Like it looked like something that someone in the town made for, I don't know. It just didn't. Yeah.
I mean, I got the sense that it was supposed to be the official sign, and clearly, they're filming in Atlanta, so. Right. So they just, that was just the Walking Dead people just, whipping up a sign and shooting that scene on the side of the road,
Right. And I agree, like official sign, but more like the official sign that like the town puts up, not the one that the highway department puts up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
okay.
It was,
sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I mean, it was like a billboard. I mean, yeah, it's clearly like the, welcome to Amity, eek, it's a shark sign,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Again, a fun little scene, and again, laying the kind of the foundation of what we can expect in season 2.
Yeah.
That way, season 2, I'm guessing it is going to be longer in number of episodes.
I'm wondering, yeah.
And we'll get kind of a split story. We'll get Daryl and his, what's going on with all of his French fries, and then Carol trying to get over there.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, that's what we're gonna see. So
agreed. Before we sort of wrap up talking about the episode, I wanted to hit on one thing in the episode that I absolutely loved, and was very important to me personally.
Oh,
so
yeah.
just
I'm gonna go put the soup on. You go ahead and talk.
Yeah, it's just a super quick thing. My first year in college, well, my first couple of years in college, I sang in the college choir, and the first year that I was there, I hadn't switched over to be a theater major yet. I was a little sort of lost and didn't know what to do. And that very first semester, the fall semester, being in the chorus was really great because I met a bunch of other people who actually were in the theater department, made a bunch of friends, and it was great. And I started singing music that I'd never sung before. The guy who was the professor who was in the music department who taught the chorus was a class, but we sang and we performed as well. And his name was Antone Aquino, and Mr. Aquino was the best. I loved him so much. And he, we did the first semester, we did some stuff from like Vivaldi or whatever, and it was singing in Latin, which I'd never done before. And it was beautiful, and I loved it. And he was retiring at the end of that year. My very first year, I got to be there during his retirement year. And one of his favorite pieces to do was a choral piece by Gabriel Fauré, who is a French composer. And it is there's a couple of different composers have their version of the Requiem. And this is Gabriel Fauré's Requiem. And we sang that as a choir. And it's I can't even express how special it is to me and how beautiful that music is. And they used 2 pieces of music, two little selections from Fauré's Requiem in this episode, which was wonderful because Gabrielle Fauré is obviously French. And there are two moments, and I'll just go through them real quick. They used a piece from the Introit, which is like the introduction, called the Kyrie, and it's just after Caudron lets them go, and it starts playing in the background, and it gets a little louder. And the words that are in there, and like I said, it's all in Latin, and it's Requiem aeternam, dona eis Domine et lux perpetua luceat eis. And in English, that just translates into grant them eternal rest, O Lord, and may perpetual light shine down upon them. Which is just, the thing is they have to understand, even so many years later, I mean, I was 19 years old when I did this music, and I'm not 19 anymore. We're looking at almost 30 years ago that I did this music, and I still remember. Oh,
you're old.
I am. But what's crazy is this music had such an impression on me. I remember every word and every note. So I was literally, with my eyes closed, mouthing and singing along to both of these pieces when they played, because I know them so well. And it was just, so it's just such a personal thing for me, and nobody else in the world is going to have this, except for like my friends that I'm still friends with that were in chorus with me. And then the second piece that they played was, they played it in the background a bit while there were all of these different moments at the nest where Daryl is sort of catching Isabel's eye from across the way. And it's a piece that's it's not the finale piece, but it's towards the end, and it's called In Paradisum, and the lyrics for that are: In Paradisum deducant angeli in tuo adventu suscipiant te martyres et perducant te in civitatem sanctum Jerusalem. And it's, may the angels receive them in paradise, at thy coming may the martyrs receive thee and bring thee into the holy city of Jerusalem. And they actually, in the song itself, they actually repeat the word Jerusalem. They do it like 5 times in a row. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous piece of music. And it just, for me personally, to include it was just, it was like my two nerd worlds colliding in the most unexpected ways. If you were to go back in time and tell me that I'd be watching a spin-off to The Walking Dead and hearing two pieces of classical choral music that I sang when I was 19 years old and would play in like a spin-off of like one of my favorite television shows ever, I'd say you're crazy. And so when it first started playing, I'm like, son of a bitch. How are they playing Fauré's Requiem? This is crazy. So it just made me, I didn't need to download the music because I already have the music on my iPhone, and just made me listen to it some more today. And just, it's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful choral piece. And I loved being a part of that. And it was just such a personal moment during the episode. For me, it was just lovely. I loved every second of it. Yeah, so that's my stuff. I promised on the Twitter, it's the only thing I said before the episode aired on AMC was I put something out on Twitter, and I was like, I'm gonna help you people out, and it's not spoilery. But when the show's over and you're like, oh, those pretty pieces of music, just Google the name Gabrielle Fauré and you'll find it. Because it's not spoilery, it's just the music. So, but yeah, I loved it personally. I thought it was great. So let's talk a little bit about how we felt about the season as a whole. Do you feel like this was a strong first season for the show?
I think it was an okay season.
Okay.
There were some things that could have been done better. There was definitely the like I said, I think episode 4 was my favorite episode of the 6. And I felt that the last 2 were very kind of standard by the numbers stuff.
Okay.
But they were clearly, we got to get everything in position for season 2 mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why it was very standard by the number stuff. But overall, I mean, I enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed this more than I did Dead City.
Yes.
I think, Dead City was, I enjoyed Dead City too, but I think this was just a better, looking at it, the look of it, the design, the ancient older buildings and setting of France was, I think, more interesting than the CGI abandoned New York was for Dead City. So of the two new shows that came out, this one I thought was better, but I think there's a lot of room for it to get to improve, and we'll have to see, what's going to happen when the strike ends at some point. Although I did find out, you were right, there is some kind of crazy waiver that they got to allow them to keep shooting, which I'm just blown away by that. I can't imagine the union being like, of course we'll let you, big studio, keep making content so you can make money. Yes, absolutely. But they are, and they're like one of a handful of shows that have that are allowing their actors to go back to work. So they are, like you said, they are in the middle of shooting season 2, but we'll have to see. Is it going to be a full season? Are we going to get 16 episodes or 15 episodes or what? Or is this 6 episode thing kind of the new normal from AMC? But we'll see. So overall, I liked it. I'm excited by it. It wasn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And there are things in it that they did that I don't like personally, but I've just come to accept that, this is just the way zombie shows are made now. So what about you? What'd you think?
I agree with a lot of that. I liked a lot of stuff for season 1, and I agree there's still some room for them to grow and get better and tighten up in a lot of areas. I think one of the places where they really exceeded my expectations is I think they did a really good job on sort of upending your expectations for some things, not everything. They still did a couple of cliched, a couple of stereotype things, but they had some moments here and there. Like I'll use and Emil and their like little relationship-y thing. Mm-hmm. On any other regular Walking Dead show, either one or both of those kids are dead and gone already. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they didn't do that. And I think I felt like in some of the stereotypical ways that hope and love get downtrodden on the regular series, I feel like they sort of leaned into that more on this show than they have in other shows in the past. And I think, don't get me wrong, there's still death, there's still some heartbreaking moments, but I think in certain places, and like I said, Sylvie and Emil and how they sort of presented that, like I said, in any other show, Falou is gone because he shoots the gun and he sacrifices himself and blah, blah, blah. So he'd be gone. But the fact that he made it is different. Mm-hmm. It's different for this show, Yeah. And I like that. There are a lot of different moments where they, there were a lot of stereotypical moments in Aslan's death, but infusing some humor in there as well to make it more of a hopeful moment. He literally said, it was kind of jokey, but for him it was hopeful. He was going to die where he was, but he was already facing east. And to him, that was a positive. And he had helped them get so far. So, you know what I mean? So it's like, I think they tried as hard as they could to lean into the love and the hope of this series. And I know that a lot of it was faith-based. And I think they did a good job of doing that without sort of smacking you over the head with the God stuff. Because, there's not, we're not coming to The Walking Dead for religious fervor. But these folks are led by faith. And so there were a lot of moments where there were some moments of just giving yourself over to faith, not necessarily faith in God, but just faith in, your fellow human beings and things like that. And it panned out in a way that it normally doesn't on a Walking Dead show. So I liked that they leaned into that for some stuff, and I hope to see more of that. I also agree with some folks have said that one of the things that Norman Reedus really wanted was to showcase art as much as possible. I mean, there's music, there was actual art, there were places of historical significance between the architecture and the Père Lachaise, the cemetery. It's like these things were culturally significant, and I think that they used that as a theme in this show way more than it's ever been a theme in any of the other universes. So I appreciate that. There was such a stress on maintaining culture and arts and things like that, which I thought was really lovely. So I hope that they do that for season 2 as well. And if they stay in France, I can't imagine that they wouldn't. And they've already actually released the title of what season 2 will be called, that they're going to subhead it even further. So it's The Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, The Book of Carol, which is interesting because it'll mean that Carol figures highly, but clearly a show that has Daryl Dixon in the title means we'll be seeing Daryl Dixon as well. So,
no, he won't appear until episode 12.
Just like Carol did. He'll show up in the finale.
That's right.
So like you said, cautiously optimistic for season 2. I think that they laid a better groundwork for a more interesting season 2 than I think Dead City did. And I know that these are 2 series that both are in a new location, something we haven't seen before kind of thing. And I just found the stuff in France just so much more visually stunning. And maybe a lot of that is I've never been to France. I've been to New York City. I know what New York City looks like. I know what to expect. It still was very interesting, but there was just a level of interest that was just so much higher with this series. So I agree with you. I did like this series more than Dead City, and I'm actually looking forward to season 2 of this show more than Dead City, which I'm a little surprised by. So there's that.
All right.
I don't know. Is there anything about this episode that we skipped over? I think we went back and forth a couple of times, and I feel like I said everything I needed to say about the episode. How about you?
There's one moment we kind of passed over, which is Cadron goes back to Janae and kind of tells his story about, I went out like foraging ahead of the group, and then I heard the shooting, and by the time I got back there, they were all dead, and and what I liked about it was Janae has this great line, and like this is like probably one of my favorite lines of the whole show out of all 6 episodes. And she goes, in the before times, and let me just stop you right there. Just the fact that we finally had a character in any of these shows refer to this time as the before times, I'm in love with this line right away. Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. And she goes, but anyway, she continues. She goes, I work nights in a museum. And she goes, night after night, just me and the art. Thousands of eyes following me from room to room. And do you know what I learned? And then Cadron's like, no, what did you learn? And she goes, I learned which eyes tell the truth and which eyes lie. And at that point, you're like, oh, dude, you done screwed up. Yeah. And the other thing, too, is before she does this line and he's in her office, she rolls him a cigarette and gives it to him and lights it for him. And I mean, it is like clear, firing squad moment there. You know what I mean? It's like, this is your final cigarette. Enjoy it, pal, because in a minute we're going to take you out back and shoot you. So anyway, it was a fun moment, and I love that line. I thought it was a really powerful line, and the fact that she looks right at him after she finishes about which eyes lied. She goes, "You killed all my men, didn't you?" And then the fact that he doesn't shy away from him, and it's just like, they wanted me to kill that kid, and I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
You got to give that character props that he's got some stones.
Yeah.
And it's just. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say as soon as she lights the cigarette, I'm like, oh yeah, he's dead.
Yeah, you done screwed up, boy. Yeah, I mean that was the thing.
That's the end of that.
Right, but just the fact that she referred to it as the before times, I'm just like, I love this line.
It was well done.
Yeah. So, yeah. but that was really it. I think again we did kind of jump around, but I think we hit all the points. You know, good and bad from the episode. So yeah, I think we're good.
I agree. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for the first section here. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss our loads and loads of listener feedback that we received, and we'll be talking about what's coming up next on the podcast.
So, bonjour, and stick around. We will be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man off bed and he's attacking another man. He looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from DriveThruRPG.com or ToxicBag.com.
Hi, this is Tom Savini, and you're listening to the Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump right into some feedback we received. Some for this episode and some for some other episodes, as it were. So, Steve, why don't you get us started off with this piece of feedback we got for episode 4?
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I got to say, I mean, we got tons and tons of feedback. I mean, I'm going through all of these letters and postcards, and I mean, it's crazy all the stuff we got here. I mean, you guys, you listener people, you are serious about this. This is crazy.
I know. Oh, wait. The carrier pigeon is landing, so I want to see if there's some feedback on there too.
Bonjour.
I kid.
All right, so we start off. We got not one but 2 emails from our pal Andy from Germany. And so I'll read the first one here, and then I will leave you to read the second one. And this first one is episode 4, and then the next one's on episode 5. And I would imagine at some point a little bit later on this week, we will get a feedback from episode 6. And if that is indeed the case, we will read that next week when we are unfortunately covering the Fear of the Walking Dead.
Don't say it.
But anyway, let's just focus on the good stuff. We won't have to look ahead to the bad stuff. So he starts out again. This is all about episode 4 of the Daryl Dixon show, and he starts out by saying, "Bonjour, mi ami, Diana and Steve." And he goes, "Comment ça va? It's so much fun when you two speak English with a French accent, but also when you speak French. It's so hard to pronounce French if you come from a Germanic language. I mean, who would need 3 vocals to write the sound O? My favorite French word in that regard is, and I'm going to butcher this, is patchouli? Patchoula? I don't know how you say it.
Patchouli?
Patchouli.
It looks like ratatouille, but with patru at the beginning of it.
Patchouli.
Anyway.
I don't know. Anyway, but however it is, it's his favorite word. And he goes, by the way, salut is spoken sale and means hi. Interesting. Okay. He goes, oh boy, I hope once there will be a Walking Dead series in Germany. Daryl will visit the Oktoberfest to eat sauerkraut and drink German beer. And of course, the Nazis took over again and want to use the opportunity to conquer France with the Blitzkrieg as they meet Daryl. Halt! Where da? Daryl Dixon. That's not a German name. Führer Frail.
Nice.
and I don't know what that means, but okay. And then he goes, I think Daryl's actions conform with his character. He's always been a killer. For example, do you remember the scene where Rick and Daryl have a savior pinned behind a tree? They're in a hurry, so Rick gives his word of honor that the savior will be safe if he gives up, and the savior surrenders, and Daryl immediately shoots him. I do remember that.
Uh-huh.
Or when Daryl shoots Morales and Rick says, that was Morales, and Daryl says, yeah, so. Or when Rick wanted to spare the civilians in the attack in the sanctuary, and Daryl just rams a hole in the wall and let the walkers in. Yeah, he did do that too.
He did do
but again, he was forced to eat dog food and listen to that awful music when he was in the sanctuary, so he had a personal score to settle with them. So he goes, I must say, I'm looking forward to Fear. Wow, really, Andy? Really? Did you sleep too close to a pod or something? He goes, it might not be as good as the Daryl series, but it's trashy fun, and I get to see all the characters again that I've grown fond of over the years. I don't really care for Laurent and the Killer Nun. Right? And then he finishes it by saying, au revoir de Allemagne, Andy, which I think means farewell from Germany, Andy. So,
nice.
So thank you so much for writing in, Andy. I'm a little surprised that you're looking forward to Fear, because I don't think even the people that are on the show are looking forward to it. But we'll have to see again. We give it the old college try, and we'll see what the crap machine gives us. But I'm glad that you're excited for it. And I think the Daryl in Germany show would definitely be a ratings bonanza. So hopefully
I agree. The best thing about that feedback from Andy is, of course, the line about he's looking forward to Fear, which is great, because to me, I feel like that gives me something to look forward to, which is it means Andy will continue to write into us. So
I see what you did there.
We will feel like the show is, you wrote it as trashy fun. I agree with the trashy part.
Yeah, the fun part.
We're not so sure about just yet. We'll see. Remains to be seen. Could happen.
Exactly.
Totally could happen. Listen, miracles happen every day.
That's right.
I'm not sure why God would waste his time on this show, but whatever. But we will look forward to hearing from you, Andy, no matter what. So that's fantastic. Thank you. So continuing on, Andy also wrote in a separate piece of feedback for episode 5 from last week. And he writes, bonjour, Steve and Diana. This episode was my most favorite so far. I got the advantage that, unlike Steve, I put no mental effort into watching Daryl's adventures, so I never see anything coming. But in hindsight, I can say the way Daryl ended up in France was nonsense. First, Daryl is much too experienced. He once lost his temper, and a good friend died because he punched Negan in the face. This would not happen to me again because of a guy he just met. Second, their method to get walkers is absurd. Why not use French walkers? I feel like that wasn't addressed. Why are you going across the ocean to get them? Walkers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I agree with you there, Andy. Absolutely. He continues and says, more importantly, there's no labor market anymore in the U.S. Hey, that's current information, not then. I don't agree that every person you meet on the road in The Walking Dead wants to kill you. Rick met good people on the road. Abraham, Eugene, Aaron, and Jesus, for example. But the world in The Walking Dead doesn't work like they depict it. How would I know the guy in the Jeep who promises fuel for work is not a slave hunter or a cannibal? There is simply no way to hire workers because nobody would trust strangers enough to work for them. He makes a fair point. I agree with you, Steve. Oh my God, your favorite words in the English language.
Yes.
I agree with you, Steve, about the super ghoul. The point is to control walkers, not to make them powerful. If I need 2 guys to pull the ghoul to the enemy, maybe it's more effective if the 2 guys fight themselves. It could be Maggie who returned. We're talking about the sort of radio call that he had with Carol, where it was, blah, blah, blah is back. He says it could be Maggie who returned in case Daryl knew that she had left. All other options seem unlikely to me. Not important for Daryl, like Heath or Dwight. Or so important, Carol would have mentioned it immediately, which we discussed. Yeah. He goes on and says, au revoir till le grand finale, Andy les Allemands. And I wanted to point out, too, that I saw someone else say, what if it's Jadis that comes back? Because Jadis could connect over to the ones who live, because if Rick and Michonne effectively get Rick out of the CRM, and where would they go? obviously back to where he came from, Jadis is the only one who knows where he came from.
Right.
So could Jadis show up looking for Rick? Possibly.
Possibly. Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know. I thought that was a good possibility. But thank you again for writing in, Andy. And like I said, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the final episodes of Fear the Walking Dead before we stick a fork in it. So thanks again for writing in. We look forward to hearing from you more next week and the weeks to come. So
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along, we're still on the international desk because we received via the email some feedback from our pal Bev too.
Hey, Bev.
From sunny or possibly not sunny Devon, England. And she starts out by saying hi, like Ross from Friends. Hi. I hope you both had a wonderful week. Well, that's the first series completed, and what did we all think of the final episode? I thought it went out on a bit of a whimper. Okay, I agree. It was not the slam bang thing necessarily we were expecting. Because after leaving us on a massive cliffhanger last week, the whole super zombie in the pit got resolved quite quickly. Although I did like the Daryl and Quinn tag team. I'm so annoyed with myself for deleting Quinn will save his son and Isabel from last week's email. I should have trusted my gut on that one. Ooh, yeah.
Ooh.
We would have given you the points if you put that in there. So always go with your gut. And
yes.
If those casino ads tell me anything, that's what you should take from it. She goes on to say, when they were cornered at the broken down car by the bad guys, I could understand why Quadron didn't want to shoot the kid, but it was beyond me why he let Daryl live. I know. I'm sorry. Quadron pulls the trigger on Daryl 10 times out of 10. There's no way he doesn't shoot that guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's just, the writers, wrote themselves into a corner and they realized, wait, we have to do season 2 of the Daryl Dixon show. We need to have Daryl Dixon in it. And so they just kind of came up with not today, Dixon. And it's like, oh, come on. I mean,
terrible.
Yeah, terrible. All right, so she goes on to say then, besides those 2 big scenes, this episode mainly consisted of people walking and talking. Although there was some enlightening conversation between Daryl and Isabel, I could have done without all the unsettled glances at each other that just didn't seem in character for Daryl. I agree. The ending annoyed the hell out of me. I think it was very convenient that Daryl found his grandfather's grave. Yes, we agree. And how the hell did the kid get there without being killed? I know. I mean, the kid can't tie his shoes, and yet he somehow, walks several days' journey away with no food or weapons or anything. Okay, whatever. I felt like the series needed a better ending. It needed to give us more to make us excited about watching the next series. Then it came in the form of Carol kicking butt. Hallelujah. Now I can't wait to see the show's return. I'm imagining that Carol will be able to speak fluent French and infiltrate the bad guys with a basket of croissants. That's awesome. She was looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Bev and Sunny, then cold, then Sunny again, Devin. And Bev, awesome feedback as always. I think whatever was going on in Melissa McBride's personal life has cleared up. Because it looks like going forward she is going. They could very reasonably have not added the extra colon and the Book of Carol and just started calling it Daryl Dixon and Carol. So yeah, but amazing feedback. Amazing.
Thanks so much for writing in, Bev. We love hearing from you. So yeah, I wouldn't wish this on anyone, but I hope that you're watching Fear so that you can send in feedback. But that's all. I don't want to make you watch something terrible. So don't watch it just because I said that.
You're making me watch something terrible.
Yeah, I know, but you're forced. You don't have any choice.
I guess.
All right, so next up, we got an email from our constant listener, Lisa Dupre. So hello, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa. Bonjour.
Bonjour. Lisa writes in and says, Dear Diana and Steve, I said I was looking forward to watching Daryl kill the super zombies, and I was not disappointed. I also enjoyed watching Daryl and Quinn go from planning to kill each other to fighting together. The fact that the outcome was predictable did not make it any less fun to watch. Okay. She continues and says, I get that Falou has agents hidden in different places, one of whom clearly got them into the arena. But getting in with a machine gun that no one spotted seems like a bit of a stretch. But at least they had a plan. I'm willing to accept it since it had a good payoff. They seemed a little irrelevant to the overall escape, but it's always nice to see the supporting cast being given something to do to justify a return in season 2. Speaking of characters we haven't seen the last of, even as Janae gets increasingly disappointing as a villain, really, you're surprised that the crowd living through a zombie apocalypse would rather see a human defeat a bunch of zombies than the other way around? She makes a good point. I liked the turn that Kadron made. It's not a huge shock that he would rather kill her men than shoot a kid in the face. I'm a little surprised he let Daryl live. I know. Promises to get him, quote unquote, next time, notwithstanding, it did seem like a waste of an opportunity for him. I can't deny he looked pretty cool lighting that cigarette before telling Janae to her face that he betrayed her. What I was both surprised and delighted by was the fact that he knows where the nest is and didn't try to use that to stay alive. Like Daryl, I just assumed he'd give up the location straight away and she'd be on their heels. Sometimes the show falls victim to cliches, but when it decides to be surprising, it's pretty awesome. I know. I'm just going to skip past the cliche of Isabel getting stabbed in the movie shoulder spot, thank you, and then walking for 12 hours.
12 hours. Hey,
thank
you know what? They gave her a sling, okay? That's the standard Hollywood thing.
And Daryl was supporting her as they walked.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally possible.
I love that you called it the movie shoulder spot. Thank you, Lisa. I love you.
It's the Hollywood wound.
It is. It's the Hollywood spot. She goes on to say, I love that the nest is Mont Saint-Michel. That island is one of the coolest places in France. I didn't recognize it on the pocket watch because I'm a nerd, but not the type of freeze frames in an image to study an engraving. Thank you for clarifying which kind of nerd you are. As hideouts go, it's pretty hard to beat. It survived multiple attacks in multiple centuries, and every time a siege there ended, it wasn't because the occupants surrendered, it was because the invaders gave up and went home. It's awesome. Fun history nerd fact, because that's exactly the kind of nerd I am, which I knew that. I went to cool churches in France while my friends were day drinking on the beach. I completely can see that happening. During the Nazi occupation in France, the Nazis lost control of the island because one American soldier was able to sneak in and recapture it. I would not be entirely shocked if there was a reenactment of that event coming up in season 2. Ooh.
Interesting.
I know. Even if I didn't listen to this week's podcast, I will, of course. Damn you. I could still hear Steve saying, of course Daryl finds the graveyard where his grandfather is. I love that you know us. Yeah, you know what? Don't care. It was totally predictable, and I still don't care. I loved that moment, and I loved that they showed the graveyard. It's an amazing place, and it was a great scene, and Norman Reedus acted the fuck out of it. Well, there you go. Some cliches exist because they work. It gives Daryl a genuine connection to the place he is clearly going to be living in for another season, because no way is he going to get on a boat and leave Laurent standing in a field of zombies. And speaking of season 2, how cool is Melissa McBride? Not a question. She's that cool. I know some people think Daryl is a bit out of character in this show. I think that's debatable. Regardless of how Daryl-like Daryl has been, Carol is the most Carol she has ever been. Acting like she's meekly surrendering while having something literally and figuratively up her sleeve was so her, I couldn't stop smiling. Carol is on the trail and a reunion is inevitable, and I couldn't be happier. I might even be looking forward to that more than Rick and Michonne. I said that mostly to annoy Diana. Lisa? We're not talking. Anyway, she continues and says, in case the super long email wasn't a clue, I really liked the finale. The series had some ups and downs, but it finished on a high note. Bye for now, because I'm not going to be watching Fear. So I guess see ya after that train finally wrecks. Au revoir, Lisa Dupré. Lisa, thank you so much. And,
and Lisa,
how dare you say you're looking forward to it more than Rick and Michonne?
I think, Lisa, really, you're selling yourself short. You're a tremendous nerd.
That's true. That's true. And if anybody doesn't believe us, you need to go back and listen to our coverage on Kingdom.
Oh my God.
Because kind of knowledge she dropped on every episode
was awesome.
we didn't need to do research on
No.
the feudal dynasties of Korea because
so
she was
great.
doing it for us every
Yeah.
week. I mean,
was
just
really
for
cool.
the whole email about the hats was enough. That's all I'm going to say about
I
that.
know. It was so amazing.
It was amazing. So thank you for writing in, Lisa, and thank you for being the nerd that I love you to be.
Yeah. And we'll see you in like 8-10 weeks.
Yeah. How long is February from now?
Well, I mean, we'll probably cover something, in between when Fear ends and when one of these things comes back. So,
we probably will.
So yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving along. Our next piece of feedback came via the Facebook, and this is from our pal Erica Price. Hello, Erica. And she says hi, not the Ross hi, because she used exclamation points. And she goes, I've been wanting to give feedback, but I took 2 weeks and went to Ireland and Scotland, which, I totally get it. If
Those
I had
are
to choose
good
between
excuses.
leaving feedback for Diane and Steve or going to Ireland and Scotland, yes, Diane and Steve, you lose, okay?
Yeah, sorry.
She goes, then I got really sick at the last day of vacation and got very behind. Oh, that's no good. All caught up now, and boy, was that last episode great. I'll jump back to the opening credits, though, and ask what you think of the red mist in several scenes signifies. That's true. We never really talked about the red mist. We just talked about the melting paintings and all that stuff.
I'm not sure I have an answer for that. So, I mean, we can sort of table that for later, but I'm not sure it's been clear whether it's just there to be cool or signify something. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I agree.
It looks cool, though. So, yeah.
It does. She goes, could it be showing France's efforts to eradicate the walkers? I've been curious this whole time. The scientists have been working hard and using lots of resources to make berserk walkers. Why? They're clearly not functioning in a way they want. What is the end goal? I know. What's the point? There's no logical reason to be like, let's get a walker and armor up its head so you can't kill it, and then make it super fast and strong. What for?
I know.
Are you trying to get killed? I mean, it's okay. Anyway, she goes on to say, Daryl's quiet moment in front of his grandfather's grave was really touching. We rarely see that side of him, and it got my eyes leaking. Aww. Mm-hmm. Now he's got to stay since Lauren is stranded on top of a bunker surrounded by ghouls. Yes. Yeah, he kind of is like, well, I guess I'm not getting on the boat. Yeah. Then she says, Carol's cameo at the end was so awesome. I'm so excited to see what she gets up to next season. My take on the first season as a whole is 8 out of 10. There were some very odd un-Daryl moments. True. Yeah. But I love seeing Isabel's flashbacks, and the cinematography was amazing. The majority of the French actors speaking fluent English, that took me out of it a little. Yeah, that was a little convenient for Daryl that everybody he ran into could speak English, but whatever. She goes, I have no problem with subtitles, but I get that they might have been concerned the rest of their viewers would be put off by it. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people I know won't watch Australian movies because they don't like subtitles. She goes, I think Norman Reedus has accomplished a great deal with this season and has set the bar high for the Rick and Michonne spinoff. Thanks for your great work on the pod. Now we slog through the last 6 of Fear. Ugh. Amazing feedback, Erica. Some really good points, and I think we're kind of in agreement with just about everything you said.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, though, I mean, yes, there were a lot of French actors speaking fluent English, and she made the point about not wanting there to be too many moments of subtitles. But I do appreciate that in those moments where it was a French person and a French person, they did speak French. Like the scenes with Janae and Caudron, it was always all in French. And I think that that's a really good commitment to that, at least in that area. I agree the French people speaking fluent English was very, very convenient. But at least in those moments where it wouldn't have made any sense for either one person to be speaking English, they stuck to French with the subtitles, which I think was great.
Yeah, they're like, hey, you're French, I'm French. How about if we speak English for this conversation? It's like, no.
Yes, doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah.
I mean, you could stick a MacGuffin in there, which is, by the way, that's when you have the leader of a multinational, multilingual group, and it's some dude from Hoboken, New Jersey.
There you go.
Yeah. That's your MacGuffin. All right. Thanks for writing in, Erica. We love hearing from you.
And my favorite are, by the way, are blueberry MacGuffins.
I like those as well.
They're very good.
Not as much as never mind, chocolate chip MacGuffins. Anyway.
And sometimes when I go to McDonald's, I get an egg McGuffin.
Is it a McGuffin?
McGuffin, yeah. The marketing on it isn't quite worked out yet.
Yeah. The math doesn't math with that.
Right.
Okay, so thanks for writing in, Erica. And
thanks so much, Erica.
We will slog through fear together. So at least we have each other. So let's think about that. Next up, we heard through our pal. We heard from our pal through Facebook. Alma Contreras wrote in for us. Alma, thank you so much for your thoughts. Alma says, Alma. This episode was more like it. Woo, it was intense. With a shocked face emoji.
Yes.
She goes on and says, I don't care what anyone says. That Laurent kid is annoying AF. Well,
I agree.
I hated that he followed Daryl, but I guess if I was a kid in the ZA, I would stick to badass Daryl Dixon too. She makes a fair point. And all I can say is, woo, motherfucking badass Carol. Yes, I love her, and I knew she had something in her sleeve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Literally had something up her sleeve.
Yeah. Now I can't wait for season 2. I agree.
I agree.
Yeah. I was interested in season 2 already, interested, but I do think having some more Carol in my life will definitely be fun. So
absolutely. Just for the cookies.
I know, the cookies alone would be delicious. I wonder if she makes MacGuffins.
Maybe she does. Maybe she'll learn. No, she's gonna come over with croissant, I thought. But...
Oh, that's right, a basket full of croissants. Sorry. Oh, jeez. Thanks for writing in, Alma. We hope to hear from you during Fear the Walking Dead.
During the upcoming, baton death march of television watching we have to do. Yes, it's going to be great. It's going to be fun, people.
We promise.
But it's going to be something, people, okay?
Oh, it'll be something.
All right, so moving along, we say, yes, we have even more feedback. It's that crazy. We received this via the Facebook, and this is from our pal Karen. I'm not related to Lauren Cohen. Hey Karen, what's going on? And she says, I don't understand why this chick is in charge and why these quote-unquote big, strong men just take orders and kneel to her. Why haven't they just conked her on the head and taken over? It's not like she's particularly threatening or cracking a whip at them. Why the hell does Face Tattoo even go back and tell her anything? Just leave. This show has the best lighting and it just looks amazing. Short, but I got it in, I think. Cheers. So very, very stream of consciousness feedback,
short and sweet.
But very funny. Yeah. There, I think, I think Janae is a little more believable as a villain than, say, Virginia was on Fear. Because Virginia was the ultimate, why are these dudes listening to this little girl at all?
Right.
Janae never had that moment in the show yet, where she, killed someone in front of everyone else when they screwed up or whatever, kind of like the crazy, bad guy moment, of like, why are you shooting your henchmen? They're doing their best, if type thing. But I think she was a little more developed and a little bit more, you could see it a little bit with her that she was a little more menacing. But you're right. It is a good point. Why hasn't somebody, just basically said, yeah, I'm done listening to you and taking her out? I don't know. It's just we just got to kind of live with it. So it
kind of reminds me of remember the character that Melanie Linsky played in Last of Us, where it wasn't clear, like, how did this woman become the leader of this resistance movement? And I mean, they gave you the backstory.
Right, with her brother and all that stuff. Yeah,
and that added to it, but there's still an element of really, but still her that you have with her, and you just have to sort of go with it. Sometimes people in the vacuum of power step in and become powerful, and some people and they're surrounded by people who just crave having someone tell them what to do.
They want that authority to be there, and also they're very charismatic, and you can say that about Janae, that she does. There's a look there. There's an ethos and a personality, and sometimes when it fails, there isn't. And I think that was the problem with Virginia, was that Virginia, the character was very uncharismatic, and you're like, why would anyone listen to anything you have to say? And whereas Janae, I think you do. But you're right. It is certainly a question, and I think like you just said, Dee, you're just gonna have to go with it because clearly she's the bad guy.
Yeah, agreed. But good points anyway. Thanks for writing in, Karen.
Thanks for writing in, man.
I like I said, I don't want to push fear on anyone, but please, if you're watching out of spite, please write in, because your feedback is always funny. So we'd love to hear from you. So, and our last little bit of feedback we got was from our pal Teresa Harper via the Facebook page. So thank you for writing in, Teresa. We love it.
Hey, Teresa, how are you?
Teresa writes in and says, I loved this finale. Woo! There's some love there. I do believe Daryl has caught some feels for Izzy and vice versa, the way they were looking at one another. I hated to see Quinn go. I liked his character. I had a feeling Tattoo Face. I love that she and Karen both called him Tattoo. Face Tattoo, and then Tattoo Face.
Tattoo Face, yeah.
I had a feeling Tattoo Face would turn on Janae. Amazing episode season, and I can't wait for season 2. Thank you both for your amazing coverage. Aw, sweet. I look forward every week to listening to you guys. That's so sweet. Hope you cover Fear, even though I know you don't like the show. Yeah, we'll be there.
And we will be there.
Maybe they will pull off having a great final season, A Girl Can Dream, and then she has a laughing emoji along with her usual ghost
emoji. Yeah.
I agree. I think every season of the last few seasons of Fear, I've gone in with, I don't want to say high hopes, but I have an open mind. Let's put it that way. They have a 50-50 shot of either absolutely being exactly what we expect, the steaming pile of dung that we expect, or they could actually do something interesting and etc. I don't think that will happen, but it is, of course, still a possibility. There is a non-zero chance that they could possibly pull it off, but let's be honest.
Yeah, I think what's happened with me with the Knuckleheads is, every season premiere, I always think to myself, it can't get worse, right? And then they shockingly make it worse. They're like, oh, no, hold our beer. You thought last year was bad. Just wait. Just
wait, Steve.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where I'm at. I even if they were to do the greatest 6 episodes ever, they're still terrible showrunners and should never be involved. They should be working in a furniture store somewhere, as far as I'm concerned, away from television. So, but again, we're going to see it, and I'm looking forward to commiserating with all of us and pointing out the stupid and the ridiculous and the boring that is that show. But we'll see.
Yeah, and think of it this way. Fear at this point only exists to highlight the fact that shows like Dead City and Daryl Dixon and hopefully The Ones Who Live are all such superior television shows that even though there were some things we had with Dead City and Daryl Dixon that we were disappointed in or hoped they had done differently, they are still, by and large, ridiculously better than Fear.
Yeah,
so
much better, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get Fear, we'll get a little bit of a break, and then we'll get The Ones Who Live, and it'll blow this show out of the water. I'm hoping.
Let's hope.
Yeah, knock wood. So, what's coming up on the podcast? Fear the Walking Dead is next week. I don't wanna. Okay, anyway, all right, let's pull off the Band-Aid and do it. So next week, after all this lead up to the most terrible show on television, next week is season 8, episode 7. Title of the episode is Anton. I'm sure we'll find out what that means. The description we've been given so far is as follows. Strand fights to protect his new life when it is threatened by the arrival of an old friend. So Madison, right? Because
maybe
Troy wasn't his friend.
I don't know. Maybe they're gonna say he was.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, So that'll be discussed next week. Obviously, we'll put out posts. I didn't include it in our notes, but I did get confirmation. I'm on Twitter. I am friends with Sonia Arena, and Sonia does writing for one of the, I'm not sure which blog it is, but she does reviews, and she gets episodes in advance, and she has to put an embargo on her reviews, et cetera, et cetera. So she'd already gotten advance copies of, I think, at least the first 2 episodes. But she also, I asked her directly, I was like, do you know if the episodes were released on the app early? Like, it has in the past released on Thursdays prior to the Sunday. And she said she was going to find that out today. She followed up with me, and she said that no, it's not going to release early. I think it's going to follow the same pattern as Daryl, because I think Dead City was early, wasn't it? Didn't it come on like City, Thursday or Friday?
Thursday or Friday night, yeah.
Yeah, well, for Fear, at least for the premiere, maybe it'll change as it goes on, but for the premiere, it'll, just like Daryl, it'll premiere on the app the same day.
So Saturday night, Sunday morning.
Yeah. So I think the same thing. You'll be able to watch it at any time on Sunday, and then it'll be on AMC, obviously, at 8 o'clock like normal. I'm slightly disappointed in that because I wish I could just get it out of the way and not have to think about it on the weekend. And I also could get like 2 watchings of the episode done before the weekend and then not have to think about the show at all.
Right, exactly.
But whatever. It is what it is. We'll make it work. It's not the end of the world. It's at least a little bit better that you can watch it at any time on the Sunday, rather than, late in the day or something like that.
Having to watch it at 7 o'clock at night on
I hate
the AMC TV. So
that's the reason I pay for the app to begin with, is so that I can have some kind of advance watching of the episodes so that we can watch multiple times.
Right.
So, because I used to hate back in the day when it was just watching it on Sunday. You got to make sure to watch it at the right time, make really good notes. And I never really had a chance to watch stuff a second time when I was only watching it on AMC on Sundays, sadly. Anyway, all right, so that's enough on Fear the Walking Dead. Ugh, we'll talk enough about it next week. So they did have New York Comic Con. There were some trailers and some things that came out. Obviously, we talked about it earlier. That scene with Carol that's at the end of the episode, that was part of like sort of the media package that came out from New York Comic Con. So obviously they made that announcement about Carol being part of the show for the second season, but they also had a new little teaser trailer for The Ones Who Live. And while we don't have a definite like date, we're a little bit closer to a more definite date. They have pinned it down to say that the show will premiere in February, and just no exact date in February just yet. We just know February. That's it. So there's only 4 Sundays in February, so I would assume it'll be one of those. Anyway, are you still there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. It was really quiet.
I'm just listening to you prattle on.
Normally I get a little or nothing. Okay, so The Ones Who Live, February. They are currently finishing up filming for season 2 of Daryl Dixon, and they said that the Book of Carol will be in 2024 as well. So that's coming. And I can't remember, but I think they said maybe we'll get second season of Dead City at some point in 2024 as well.
I don't know. I don't remember. I think with the exception of Daryl Dixon, the thing to consider is, I want to say last week after we recorded, like Tuesday or Wednesday, it started to trickle out on social media that the talks between the Screen Actors Guild and the studios completely broke down.
Yes,
and
true.
There are no new talks scheduled, and so in many ways, from hearing it from the actors in the Screen Actors Guild, which is really the only source we're getting, and I'm sure they're being honest. I don't think they're clearly. Usually you tell stories to make you look better, but I'm sure they're being pretty truthful about it. That they're not hopeful. And in many ways, they feel like they're back to square one again. You know, they were making proposals, and then the studios basically didn't come back with a counter proposal. They just said no. So I think any information we have for any show that doesn't have one of those weird special waiver things that Daryl Dixon has, you have to take with a grain of salt. And that,
True.
You know, is it going to be 2024? I don't know. Right now, there's no work being done. So how is that going to affect any sort of advanced dates? Hopefully, let's hope it all comes to fruition and we get these shows. But it might be late 2024. You know, we might be looking at November, like a year from now, before those shows. Yeah. So just remember that. You know, that could be something. So.
Yeah, that's true. You make a fair point. But either way, once Fear is done, and it'll be done in 2023, 2024 will be all about good shows connected to the Walking Dead universe. Whether we get all 3 of them or we only get 1 or 2 of them, it won't matter, because Fear will be done and we'll be back to good shows, which will be great. And I'm very excited for that.
Let's hope so.
I don't think we got anything else to talk about. We should probably just wrap this up, don't you think?
We're about a month out from Days of the Dead Chicago.
Yeah.
So if you're in the Chicago area, or you're planning on being in the Chicago area, and if you've ever been to a convention, or if you've gone to 100 of them, or you've never gone to any, if you get a chance, go. It's a really fun time, and we'll talk more about it as we get a little closer, and obviously we'll do a recap after it happens. So that's coming up.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're pretty excited. Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to go ahead and do it for us this week. Thanks again, as always, for listening in, folks. We look forward to not so much to watching Fear, but we look forward to talking to you guys about it. So please know that we're very excited to continue chatting with you guys week to week. So until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve. Bonjour.
Don't forget to always bonjour for the last time. Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they just do not work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
I love it. All right, let's do it. So, ready to go?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so 3, 2,